Yeah, punish the.
Oh, right. But finally.
Yeah. So then, like, what's the incentive? Like, what's the incentive for people to actually follow the rules?
Well, I think it's just the candidates themselves.
You have to plug in.
Actually, but like I don't think. Well, and also like we would like make you cover it up. Like,
you'll be removed.
I say, my hand is in there.
Oh, it's okay. You might get there. Humble yourself. I would like a sergeant AR, and I would like to be the sergeant AR. I want to stand in the back of that room with a Glock. Or perhaps a sword.
Why do we suck so bad?
No.
Yeah.
Why do we suck so bad at this?
Did you hear that I tried to get
I agree. I don't know.
Where did you go?
Marta, we should go. Oh.
Oh yeah, actually, you got any other questions about
She's having a time
About what?
I just wanted to make sure because I was like,
Oh,
because
no.
I stepped on my own toe.
Yeah, I have been duly convinced to let next year.
Oh.
So, no,
No, we have to like.
I just talked to you and Evan.
I thought I was good.
Yeah.
You know, you all have like stuff. Like, I agree.
Love you. I would agree. Okay, Peyton. Okay.
Not deciding
Wait, you made that worse. That was you.
And you gotta move your banana.
No.
You stood completely stationary.
Well, just don't exist. Just
no, that's the other two.
We also have to take
This is
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's
I'm B team, Mike.
I don't have any something necessarily. Where are you? Yeah, I'll bring you on like. But I bring you on just because the nomination that's I'm doing it right now. Yep. Yes. You do play damage. Yeah. So it's experimental. Okay, what I realized, like what I've got a lot of interest on is like there are different A characters for different missions, right? Generally the split is like lead and knight. So if you have you bring lead characters for the war, well, white characters.
Angel, I'm glad you survived.
There's like a billion.
Getting run over by
trying to hit you.
an assassination attempt.
Yeah, like, I know I shouldn't have been talking because I did not have the sign. But I like
drive too quick.
But yeah, like you gotta have a bit of fun, you know?
And I saw this car driving, not slowing down. So, and I don't know who's in the car, but I just like stared whoever it was down and like nobody.
Exactly.
I walked in and I said, so sorry, I tried to take you to my car. I was gonna text you and say sorry, and then I was like, I shouldn't be texting and driving after I almost assassinated Rachel. That was weird.
Plus 25 damage.
Rachel, your jacket, everything. Thank you.
1987.
Hello, Carter.
We got to set an operations check. You had the internal. Send my flight. Like, none of the earliest at least in this like there's stuff going on. I mean, it's definitely free. Nice. But they don't have fun.
I'm sitting up here.
I don't have to do anything on that.
No.
We're good, right? It was great. Doing well, how are you? Oh, you had excited. I like your fifth. She's very.
I want to talk about World War II. I am very little on money. Whoa. This is so interesting. Increase the number of you spread the reach.
I do.
Here's one Des Moines.
I am not.
Underwater bottle.
I wish I could see your stuff.
I worked at Lewis, but I worked at the wine paper. Yeah.
Oh.
All around. Yeah, all around. It's yeah.
It just looks like it continually increases the number of in there. I gotta I'll just read it twice.
You thought you weren't that. One more than you.
Funny for who they're
You know what they say?
That's amazing.
I'm actually talking to an advisor today, about part-time students on the need for help. There are good. My advisor today was like, do we have, like, is there anybody on there? And I said no. So
Yeah,
I thought you would know if you were.
there's me. I'm the undergraduate students. There's
Sounds good. If you're on the, I was like, sometimes helping human scientists, like, forget about getting people on the other or not. And I said no.
So yeah, I'm involved in it.
Nice. Okay.
It's moving along. So.
Happy birthday, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Raspberries are my favorite. I thought they just weren't accurate.
I don't either. Like right now.
Oh,
Sorry, not like gonna be elected.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, there's probably not. Oh, no.
You look Facebook, I know it is. Like Facebook.
Yeah.
But you like this.
Oh, yeah, but it's 59. This guy's
So I've got 6.5%.
I'm happy I did
Maggie, I think Andrew is one.
Stop.
I'll at least figure out.
They went to solicit to watch it. Yeah. I'm not sure they're leaving it or something, but like they should be because.
I haven't seen it so I feel that.
I'm not sure when they're gonna be back.
I know.
Like they're looking out for a bit.
Not good.
Yes.
I'm joking.
I like that.
Whatever.
Because it's fine.
Yeah, right.
I think it's just they just expect it to like.
I'm here, Marta.
Oh my god, it was so good.
That's the last time I saw you. You were on your way out of town.
Yes.
Okay.
How did that make a little?
Yeah. They're close.
Alrighty, everyone, we're going to get started in just a couple minutes, so if you could find your seats relatively soon, and we can get rolling. I now call this meeting of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to begin our Student Senate meeting taking place on Thursday, February 17th, 2022, with a land acknowledgement. We recognize that Kansas State University, as the first land-grant institution, stands on the ancestral lands of the Kaw peoples. Our state of Kansas is the home to 4 federally recognized Native nations: the Iowa, Kickapoo, Prairie Band Potawatomi, and Sac and Fox. We must remember that the land serving as the foundation for this institution was, and still is, stolen land acquired by white settlers. We pledge our commitment to creating decolonized spaces at the university while advocating for the support and future success of Indigenous faculty, staff, and students at Kansas State. With that, we'll go into first roll call with Ariana.
Okay, let's get this party started. Bane?
Here.
Bannister?
Here.
Bellamy?
Here.
Binkley? Oh, sorry, that's a Proxy. Blood?
Here.
Booze?
Here.
Byrne?
Here.
Compton? Cranford? DeMott?
Here.
Dunlap?
Here.
Insero?
Here.
Esslinger?
Here.
Fields?
Here.
Gann?
Here.
Glasscock?
Here.
Heatherman?
Here.
Hotzel?
Here.
Kalarikial?
Here.
Kidd?
Here.
Koch?
Here.
Long?
Here.
Mayor?
Here.
McPhee? Nelson?
Here.
Pineda Gomez?
Here.
Porter?
Here.
Riffle?
Here.
Rook?
Here.
Solomon?
Here.
Shear? Schindler?
Here.
Spiegel?
Here.
Sitzma?
Here.
Thomas?
Here.
Volgamore?
Here.
Wallace? Willis Jackson?
Here.
Willis Reese?
Here.
Zhao? I did not, thank you.
Alrighty, with that, we'll move into first open period. First up, we have Jackson Burland.
Just a reminder to shark your computers or close them unless you're taking notes as a courtesy to our first open period speaker.
Hi, I'm Jackson Burland. For those of you who do not know me, I am the current program director for Wildcat 919, the on. Thank you. Ooh, that is much louder. Thank you very much. The on-air, the campus-wide radio station. So yeah, this is a station for students, by students, and we have a lot of fun with what we do. At first, I just wanted to take a few seconds to kind of talk about some of the things that we do on a daily basis here at Wildcat 919. If you go to the so we have regular on-air talent. We have DJs for the majority of the day. And we have, every day we have 2-hour block for our morning show, our afternoon drive, and our late night talk show, all of which are very campus-centric, very local stuff, really just fun stuff that is curated and created by students for students. We have weekly podcasts on Saturday, Sundays. We host and curate and create live local music events. We got a few coming up. Annie Mae is coming up here soon, which we're really excited about. And we do a lot of video work. We just did a live set with a local band called Same Sounds, which was a lot of fun. And they came to our studio, did a live set, and we recorded the whole thing. So we have a lot of fun, and we really enjoy working hard at making the local community in Manhattan really good. Up here is just an example of some of our work. I pulled mostly from my stuff because I have access to it, but here's an example of some of the promotional material we use. If you want to play that, you don't have to play the whole thing, but essentially our fundraising director,
Colby Van Camp,
Colby Van
Director
Camp,
of Fundraising
just
for
graduated
Wildcat 919.
as an opera student
New
and now
music.
came back as fundraising. So
I'm
he
the
did an
Director of
opera,
Radio
promotion.
Fundraising. I'm so good, they call me amazing.
So, Yeah, that's just an example of some of our work. We have a lot of fun creating just new original stuff that it really, Wildcat 999 is a design like a storytelling factory for all the students that want to get involved. So why in the world am I talking about this? Why am I coming up here and talking about Wildcat 919? It's because we at Wildcat 919 focus on 3 main points. Those points being curiosity, community, and storytelling. We are really curious and focused on the people at hand here at K-State, as well as like what we want to be and we are becoming a central hub, a heart of information that this university can really work through and be there every morning, every afternoon, every night. We are there, we are reliable, and we have the information for the students. And the reason I bring this up is because after having the wonderful Koger on the morning show, we realized that there is a very innate and organic bridge that can be built between SGA and Wildcat 919 for things like, when there are pieces of information and decisions and stuff going in and out of these chambers that maybe the general populace of the university may or may not have access to knowing, may not know how to receive that information. But they do know how to turn on a radio, and they do know how to go to Wildcat 919. And so with that, I forgot to put in here, we have on average around, not all at the same time, but we have a listener pool of around 10,000, and that's continuing to grow. So we have a large group of people who listen. And so creating this bridge, the reason I'm here today is because I would like to work on creating a foundational bridge between SGA and the information coming out of here, and us as kind of an information purveyor for all of campus. And also we have listeners from, whether this matters or not, we have listeners from every continent except for Antarctica. We're working on that one. So some of the things that we can do, like if you want to have these happen, we can have a weekly SGA rundown for any 1-2 people from SGA that would like to come to the station and have a weekly show. We can make that happen. We can set that up to where you just talk about what went on during the week. If that seems too much of a commitment to some of you, totally fine. We could have a system where you send us updates of what's going on inside the system and not in, you know what I mean, the SGA, and we can put that as part of our top of the 9, noon, 3, and 6 hour for our news updates. We also, if that is too much, or if that's not something you want to do, we can do something that we did with Koger here. If you want to have regular rotating guests from the SGA to come on to our morning show, which runs from 7 to 9 a.m., our afternoon drive, which goes to 4 to 5 p.m., or our late night talk, which goes from 9 to 11 p.m., we can set that up to have any one of you come on and talk about just what's going on in SGA. So yeah, up next is my wonderful contact information. Please, please, please write this down, whether or not you want to use it, you care to use it. There might come a time of, oh crap, I gotta get in touch with the radio station. So yeah, take a picture, get that down, put it in your memory, write it. I don't know. Tattoo it on your arm. I don't know. But that is my presentation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jackson. Are there any questions for our first open period speaker? Alrighty, in that case, thank you so much for your time this evening. We were happy. Oh,
Yes.
Yeah. Throughout your experience with Wildcat 919, is there like a moment that you want to share with us that was kind of like really big for you, and you knew that like that was the right place for you?
Literally the first day. If it's not apparent, I am a theater student. After pandemic, I had done one too many Zoom shows, and I'm like, I can't keep doing this. And so my first day back on campus, 2021, I was like, okay, I got to do something to like keep my skills sharp and get involved and be on this campus and really do something fun. Show up the first day to radio, the professor, if you know, a lot of you I'm sure know the name Ian Punnett, he said, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to put on this radio station? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're letting me have creative freedom over something that I'm going to put my work and effort into? You're crazy, you're wild. But that's exactly what happened. Is I walked up, he was like, what do you want to produce? And I had never experienced that, never had that as it was always like, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna go and sit behind this curtain and raise it every 5 minutes and put it down every 5 minutes, and that was theater. That's what theater does. But radio is much more of a creative platform where you get to do what you want on the air, which is really cool. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for that question, Rachel. President Dowd.
Jackson, what has been your favorite interview or most interesting?
Ooh, I've had a lot of intimidating interviews, but I think the one that was unexpectedly the most fruitful was by a guy by the name of Bill Simmons. Bill Simmons is a lawyer by day and an Owsley Stanley curator by night. For those of you who do not know who Owsley Stanley is, he was in the late 60s, early 70s with the psychedelic movement. He was one of the main scientists and curators and chemists around curating LSD. That's how he made a lot of money, but he used that money to look into the arts and record a lot of stuff and just get videotape after videotape after videotape and recording after recording after recording of all these incredible Los Angeles-based artists. And those box tapes sat in a basement for 30 years, untouched. And this man, Owsley was his mentor. And once Owsley died, he inherited those tapes, took them, and he's in the process of digitizing them. But with these tapes being so old, as soon as you start playing it at all, the tape just disintegrates, so they have one chance. They have one chance to get these tapes right, and it's so cool seeing his work and what he's been able to do. We played a lot of really interesting psychedelic, I can't remember the name. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, not important. The important part was it was a lot of really cool interview.
We have a question on Zoom.
Yeah, so let's just say I had an upcoming philanthropy. Is there a chance that I could email you and I could get put on the radio?
100%. That's what we're built around. I feel like I'm just talking into God up there. That we as a station really focus on becoming kind of a central point of information for all this stuff. So anytime you have something you want to talk about, something that's going on inside of the university that doesn't have a whole lot of, it can have money involved, but just like Wildcat Watch, they are there as a system to make sure that people have good video sources. We are a system to make sure that you have good promotion through the station.
Director
Maybe in
Ebeck.
contact.
Director Ebeck.
Hi, Jackson. Thank you for coming.
Of course.
What is your favorite part about hosting the morning show?
Ooh, definitely not waking up at 6 a.m. That's not it. My favorite part of hosting the morning show is the fact that I get to sit down with my co-host, Max Lansdowne, every single night. We get our legal pads. We just go through the bits of okay, what are we going to do this time? Okay, let's do a Hot Mulligan album, and then we'll link that with a story about this. And it's just, I like to talk. And so being able to have a platform to share stories and try new stuff, and that's a thing, especially with this station. It's a space of creating with very little consequences. And so we get to try new, fun, wild, wacky ideas every single morning. And so it's pretty special.
Alrighty. Chair Lynn.
Do you have breakdowns of what percentage of your listenership is students versus the Manhattan community?
I really wish I did.
I'm sorry, time for questions is expired.
Chair Lynn.
I move to extend questioning by 5 minutes.
Is there a second? Perfect. Any objections? Fantastic. Time for questions is extended by 5 minutes.
I really wish I did. We just kind of get at the end of the month an email from our technical crew of here's 20% from India, 20% from Africa, 500% from all. We just kind of get the percentages. I wish we did. I will tell you, there has been more than one occurrence where a Jackson Max show has appeared in somebody's lecture because they were listening to it and they wanted to know about the music in it. So we do have a weird amount of professors listening. So professors. That's the word.
Senator Bellamy.
Yes, I have a two-parter, if that's okay.
Yeah.
First of all, how can we help you? This obviously sounds great. Is there any way we can help you except for coming on your show?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. It's never been asked, how can somebody else help me? Oh, wow. I will have to get back to you on that. I'll think about it. That's a good question. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
And the second part, I have a follow-up. Where can we request songs? We do that?
Ooh, if you call into, write this number down, all of you. If you call into the station at 785-532-0919, 70% chance we're gonna have a live DJ on the set. Just call in, say, hey, I really want to listen to this song, and we'll get it on for you.
Can you say that number again?
785-532-0919. That is our on-air hotline request number.
Senator Booz.
Yeah, I know that like a lot of my experience and exposure to Wildcat 91.9 was through partnership with the Collegian on Collegian Cultivate
Yes,
podcast.
yeah.
I was wondering if you got any more plans for that.
At the top of my head, we are a little bit more disconnected from the Collegian Media Group as of right now. But what I can say is in the past, we have worked with Collegian directly on their podcast. Then Happening has had a podcast through our station. And we also regularly partner with them. So within Collegian itself, we have no immediate plans. Because mostly when it comes to that, it's mostly students from those organizations saying, hey, we want to do podcasts. And we're like, cool, we'll set you up. And so because there's no immediate interest, we don't have something like that right now. That being said, this is why I'm here. Any of you that want to do a podcast, like talking and want to talk on the air, that's what this is for.
Great.
Hi, Jackson. Thanks for coming tonight. It's good to see you. My question is, so you mentioned you have viewers from all around the globe. Do these people listen online? Is there like a big online component?
There is an app.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Ooh, it's really actually very convenient. It's literally you look up Wildcat 91.9, you go into the app, you press the play button, and the radio plays. So that's honestly how most of our listeners are coming in nowadays. It used to be like 30, 70, but now it's a lot of people that use that app.
Follow-ups? You mentioned Max Lansdowne. Can you give me his number?
Yeah, find me after this. Sure, yeah. I won't give his number out over just like without his consent, but like I will, if you want his number after this, I can make that happen, probably.
Okay, fantastic. Are there any further questions for our speakers? Senator Insero.
Jackson, are you all still using the satellite station in the Union for open mic?
That is a great question. Right now, no. But it's because for the past year and a half, it's been totally out of commission. We're working on it. It's coming back. And expect to see people in there in the next 2-3 weeks. Yeah, yeah.
I love that.
I miss it so much.
Alrighty, any further questions? Okay, in that case, Jackson, thank you so much for your time tonight. Okay, are there any further speakers for first open period? In that case, we'll move into approval of the minutes. The minutes were sent out with this week's agenda. Are there any questions or corrections for the minutes? In that case, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Senator Heatherman.
I move to approve the minutes. Seconded.
Thank you so much. In that case, we'll move on to announcements. If you have not been vaccinated against COVID-19, please consider getting vaccinated. Information regarding COVID-19 vaccinations can be found at the link below, or if someone you know would like to receive a COVID-19 test kit, please visit covidtests.gov. Speaker Phillips is seeking 3 students to serve on the Academic Competition Teams Committee. If you haven't already been selected to serve on this committee and are interested in doing so, please email Blake at bphillips@ksu.edu. The meeting will occur on February 26th. Forums for the academic competition teams and sports clubs are open now. Forums close at 4 p.m. on Friday, February 25th. These forms are available on the Org Central Funding Opportunities tab. Due to lower COVID-19 case numbers, Student Senate will resume having Zoom by request starting next week. In order for student senators to attend Student Senate via Zoom, please fill out the Zoom request form. Zoom requests will be approved based on the Student Senate attendance policy found in the KSU SGA statutes 02-0213C. Zoom requests can be submitted at the link in the agenda. Proxies. If you are going to be absent from a Student Senate meeting, please fill out this link, even if you aren't sure that your absence will be excused. This week, we have a whole lot of proxies. Mayor for Prester, Kidd for Kahlo, Sitzma for Marquez, Long for Jambunathan, Koch for Roth, Gann for Holland, Salmon for Lister, Riffle for Stout, Volgamore for Binkley, Lynn for Barron, Hotzel for Warren, Richenberg for Fuss, DeMott for Scharnhorst, and Shear for Kramer. Want to give props to someone in Student Senate? Fill out the Student Senate shout-out form, and Ariana will read them out at the end of our meeting. The SGA member of the week this week is the Student Services Fee Committee. The Student Services Fee Committee has had a tough task this year, reducing the overall SSF budget deficit, and has had a fantastic goal of seeing this through with so many difficult and impactful decisions. Thank you all for your dedication to serving our students and for your hours of hard work. Alrighty, and finally, if you look into the agenda, you can see our upcoming events calendar. Specifically, next week is election week, so get ready for all of that. But with announcements out of the way, we'll move first into commendations. Is there a...
the quote of the week?
Oh, that's an excellent point, Ethan. I'm so sorry for missing the quote of the week. The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members, by Coretta Scott King. Thank you for reminding me. Alrighty, now we'll move on to commendations. First up, Resolution 21-2248. Is there a motion to consider? Chair Lynn.
I move to consider Resolution 48.
Second.
Will the author please come forward?
The author isn't here. Like you.
Okay, this is Resolution 21-2248, Commendation to University President Richard Linton, authored by Blake Phillips, sponsored by all of those people. Whereas on February 14th, 2022, President Richard B. Myers officially retired as the 14th president of Kansas State University. Whereas on December 2nd, 2021, Dr. Richard Linton was announced as the 15th president of Kansas State University by the Kansas Board of Regents. Whereas President Linton has a long-standing history at land-grant institutions, including graduating from Virginia Tech University, serving as a food science faculty member, director and founder of the Center for Food Safety Engineering, and associate director of agriculture research programs at Purdue University, serving as the department chair of food science and technology at Ohio State University, and serving as dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at North Carolina State University. Whereas President Linton's wife, Sally, and their children, Lily and Chris, will soon come to Manhattan, Kansas. And whereas President Linton's first day in office was Monday, February 14th, 2022. Be it resolved that the Kansas State University Student Governing Association officially welcomes President Linton and his family to Manhattan, Kansas, and to the K-State family. KSU SGA looks forward to working with President Linton and is excited to build on the longstanding history of shared governance at Kansas State University. Upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the Student Body President, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to University President Dr. Richard Linton.
Thank you so much, Peyton. Are there any questions or corrections for the author, Senator Bellamy?
Does anyone know the name of their two dogs?
That's a very important question.
I don't know the name of their two dogs.
I do not.
I don't think anybody does, unfortunately.
Okay.
I could email Grant Hill and we could find out.
I have an amendment that might be friendly. Can we add their dogs' names if we find out?
Yeah, I'll get that. I'm sure we can.
All right, pending finding out the dogs' names, we can add the dogs' names. Are there any further questions or corrections for Peyton? Alrighty, in that case, is there a motion to approve Resolution 48? Senator Porter. Chair Porter.
I move to approve Resolution 21-2248 unanimously.
Seconded.
Are there any objections? Alrighty, fantastic. Resolution 21-2248 stands approved. Alrighty, with commendations out of the way, we'll move into approval of appointments. Resolution 21-2249. Is there a motion to consider? Senator Rook.
Yeah, I move to consider this one.
Is there a second?
Second.
Perfect. Author, please come forward.
You missed the paper copy? Yeah.
Here, I have an extra over here.
Sorry for Nick's incompetence. It's okay. Anyway. This is Resolution 21-2249, approval of new student senators. Authors me, sponsors the Senate Operations Committee. Whereas there is currently one vacancy for the position of student senator for the graduate school, whereas the list of candidates from the 2021 KSU SGA general election has been exhausted, whereas Jikai Zhao was nominated by the Graduate School Council in its capacity to fill the vacancy, whereas there is currently one vacancy for the position of Kansas State University Salina Aerospace and Technology Campus, KSU Salina representative, to the KSU SGA Student Senate, and whereas the KSU Salina Student Body President nominated Jack Byrne in their capacity to fill the vacancy, be it resolved that Section 1, the following individual be approved as a student senator for the graduate school, Jikai Zhao, and Section 2, the following individual be approved as the KSU Salina representative to the KSU SGA Student Senate, Jack Byrne. And I will say, I don't think our graduate senator is here tonight, unfortunately, so we're going to have to just postpone that to next week, unless he's in the Zoom.
He's on Zoom.
Is he on Zoom?
Yep. 2 or 3 down.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Like bottom right-ish, bottom left-ish. 2 over 3 down.
No, our
Jack is our
graduate
representative for
school
Salina.
student.
Oh.
Sorry. Anyway, so we'll just catch him next week.
Okay, thanks, Evan. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Alrighty, in that case, is there a motion to approve unanimously? Chair Lynn.
I move to approve unanimously.
Second.
Alrighty, any objections? In that case, Resolution 21-2249 is also approved. So yeah, Evan is right. We don't have our graduate senator, so we'll have to swear them in next week. But Jack, if you are on the Zoom, we can get you sworn in now.
Yeah, howdy everybody.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm gonna read off the oath of office. It is a lot of words. All you have to say at the end is, I will. Ready?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of senator and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association.
I will.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if you would like to introduce yourself to the chamber, name, major, where you're from, and what your favorite smell is.
Okay, all right. I don't know if is that a question that you guys ask at every single new senator?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, well, my name's Jack Byrne. I am from Wichita, Kansas. I've spent some time in Houston, Texas as well. I'm currently living in Salina at the K-State Salina campus. I'm majoring in aeronautical technology, so professional piloting, flying planes, stuff like that. So I really enjoy it. I'm a sophomore here. And my favorite smell is definitely a good espresso.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Jack. We're excited to have you with us.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you all in the future.
Okay, with that, we'll move into committee reports. Are there any committee chairs that would like to give a report this evening? Chair Harmon.
Psych. Sorry, Maggie, that's gonna be next.
Oh.
This is a student services fee report. I fooled all of you. Cool stuff happening in student services fee world. We actually postponed our final decision on the union's budget until this coming Monday. We had some more questions we wanted to get asked and really dial down some of that last information. So I will be able to report what that decision was coming up, but we'll have that decision after our initial presentation for Union Programming Council and as well as Campus Entertainment Fund, both presented by Audrey. So kicking off our last set of reviews for the year on Monday, and that is super exciting. Perhaps even more exciting, if that's even possible. During our review of Union and getting all of those numbers worked out, I don't have it up on the screen. You can't see it there, you can see the pretty colors. This is the Student Services Fee Master Spreadsheet. Incredibly, incredibly fun. It has all of the budget line items going back literally a long time since we started tracking it in this Excel spreadsheet and doing out some of those predictions for how our work that we've done this year basically totals up and basically where we're at in terms of our final goal. And I got to share some of these numbers with Senate Executive Committee on Tuesday, but it's really exciting because I'm happy to report if things go on track, the work that we have done this year pays off. We meet our goal in FY24, so the second year, we hit our goal of the 1.5 million overall reductions on the fee. So that was our goal. The decisions we make this year to make those decisions total up to at least 1.5 million in reductions. And then the goal is for 3 years by FY25 to have that equaling to 2 million. So it's amazing. Yes, we were really, really excited when we got to see that and know that we're at least on the right track and we're able to accomplish that goal. But it's not just about the number. Something I shared at Senate Exec is that the number is there, but I think the actual very cool and impressive thing is that we have managed to do that number in a process that I think has maintained those relationships, which I think is some of the most important and hardest part of doing that work. So I wanted to share that with you all and let you know that your decisions, ultimately approving those contracts, has definitely paid off and really will benefit students massively, just next year even. If we wouldn't have been able to do that, then things would be bad going forward. But that's also with the final caveat that next year will also be hard. We have another 500,000 to make up just on the entities up for review next year. The major ones of which are the REC, students, the Center for Student Involvement, and the student activity fee. So the decisions will continue to be very momentous and important, but we have the utmost confidence that you all will be able to do it for those of you who remain in this chamber for next year. So I wanted to share those numbers with you all. Thank you all for all of your hard work, and I look forward to rounding out the term with the rest of that.
Alrighty, thanks so much. Are there any questions for Max?
Yep.
Senator Booz.
Yeah, now I'm actually kind of interested. When did you start recording all the information on that spreadsheet?
Andrew. Well, the first column is A. The columns go all the way down, and it's not like one column per fiscal year. It's about 3 per fiscal year. We're working up to column AT. So we've gone all the way through the alphabet and almost all the way through another alphabet. So divide that by 3, you'll have a rough number of fiscal years that we've been. Very rough approximation.
Okay, cool. Any further questions for Max? In that case, are there any further committee chairs that would like to give a report? Chair Harmon.
Yes, so, and then, so this isn't just me. This is the committee report for the Joint Committee on Officers' Compensation. So if Hannah, Donnie, Evan want to join me up here, I don't think Kathleen's in here. Sweet. Here, and I'll trade off on this side, balance this out. So, as you all know, we have met twice this week, and this is the committee made up of the 4 of us, plus Kathleen Howell, an appointee from the Judicial Branch, or Judicial Branch's appointee, and chairing this committee was Dr. Thomas Lane, and in this committee, we went over changes to the levels of compensation that SGA leadership officers receive. And so this was all due to the fact of last week's passing of the legislation that combined a lot of roles, reorganized a lot of positions. And so the purview of this committee was mainly just to kind of reallocate those funds and make changes based on those changes in the legislation. So something really important to note, this was kind of an out-of-cycle calling of the Joint Committee. And so next year is their normal, they meet every 3 years. And so next year, they will meet again and have their full normal process, which is a little bit more of an extended timeline than this one. So what this presentation will be is we'll just kind of go through, scroll down, we'll show you what the changes are, and work our way through some of our reasonings. So that you can see is just kind of some history. This is like the general format for any JCOC report. Tells you some of the history in there, and then the makeup of the committee. So you can see Dr. Lane, and then myself, Evan, Kathleen, Hannah, Donnie, and Kelly Ferris. Sorry, Kelly, if you're on the Zoom. She also is there for all of those meetings.
These are past recommendations. So this was the last normal in-cycle recommendations of JCOC were made in 2019. So you can see all of the previously compensated positions. And something to note, all of those scholarship dollars are based on a percent of tuition. That's of 14 credit hours of in-state tuition. The only exception to that is the student body president, who is scholarshiped for out-of-state tuition if they're an out-of-state student. And then you can also see there are 4 positions that also turn in time cards each week and have additional compensation on top of their scholarship. So that's student body president, vice president, the speaker, and the attorney general. And you can see those percentages from the 2019, from the last recommendation over there on the right. So that's the past, and we'll show you, we'll have the things that are changed highlighted down below. And then I'll kick it over to one of you. Do you guys want to talk about, how we focused our decisions basically and what rules we covered?
Yeah, so if you have been paying attention over the past few weeks, we got rid of a couple positions and created a couple new ones. So we no longer have a treasurer, the 2 on-campus and travel allocations chairs, the government relations chair. Those 4 positions are going to receive $0 from now on, since they are positions that no longer exist. And then so that was a really good jumping off point to figure out exactly how much pretty much we had to work with to provide funding for the scholarships for the new chairs, which are the strategic oversight chair, the tuition enhancements chair, and the student allocations chair. And we also looked at adjusting the way that the elections commissioner is compensated, because currently it's a little bit confusing and hard for them to actually get paid appropriately. So we lumped that in with this analysis of compensations.
Yep. So then, we just want to work through each of the different bullet points.
Sure. So if you'll note, I know it's not up there anymore, but on the 2019 recommendations, if you take the total percentage of 14 credit hours, it all adds up for all those positions to 500%. Just saying up front, our net recommendation on this was 485%. So this is an overall budget reduction for compensation. And that's something we kind of anticipated, because there are a lot of operational efficiency improvements and synergies from the changes that were made. And even from a budget point, we think we're going to be able to reap the benefits of those. So first up, with student body vice president, if you'll recall, they previously chaired the Educational Opportunity Fund Committee, and it has now been moved into the Tuition Enhancements Committee. For that, we recommended a decrease of 5% for that responsibility, reducing the student body vice president compensation to 55% of tuition. For Speaker Pro Tem, they had a net 0 impact because they lost the responsibility of chairing DPC, but assumed some responsibilities of the treasurer, including managing the internal SGA budget.
Time for the presentation has expired.
Chairland.
I move to extend speaking time by 10 minutes.
Any objections? Okay, Van.
Great. For the chief of staff, we also voted to maintain the same scholarship level. Motivating factors was that the chief of staff would be serving on an additional committee every week, but really once we got into discussing how the executive branch office works and the high volume of meeting requests that they just divide between the 3 of them, we didn't think there would actually be that big of a difference. It would likely mean that the vice president or president would just be serving on an extra random committee across the university. Treasurer, 0%, obviously. Same with on-campus and travel allocations committee. For diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, that 5% that ended up netting to 0 on the Speaker Pro Tem position, this 5% an added responsibility for funding to a non, I guess, like fiscal position otherwise, is kind of how we looked at it. Increase the DEI committee chair compensation from 5 to 10%. GR was eliminated to 0. For strategic oversight committee, we recommended a 5% of tuition as honestly a starting point to jump off of. That's previously the level that DEI and GR were compensated at. So we kind of use that as our starting point, knowing especially that next year this will be re-reviewed moving forward. The Student Allocations Committee, previously the travel and on-campus allocations chairs were each compensated at 20%. We recommended with these combined responsibilities that just like taking advantage of a larger committee, more people to write legislation, being able to streamline that process, and hopefully too being to really invest in bringing up other leaders in SGA, like vice chairs, that this person, that 25% would be equitable in this case for their workload, especially since there's been extensive conversations in the past about reducing travel and on-campus allocations compensation. And then almost to the end, sorry guys. With Tuition Enhancements Committee, we set that level to 15%. Chairing 2 major committees for a whole time period, and also that equates to like $900,000 for context there, and a lot of external work with campus stakeholders. There's a chart that says that.
Yeah.
Did we talk about elections?
Elections Commissioner just up just a little bit. We have one more. Yep.
Right, hello everyone. I'll talk a little bit about the Elections Commissioner and the situation we were in, what we were looking at there. So prior, actually if you do scroll down to that chart, down. Yeah, right about there. So if you notice there on the 3rd column from the left, where it says hourly. So prior to our review, the allocation of the Elections Commissioner was just pretty much just listed at an hourly rate with not much context. So you notice that first asterisk point down there, historically that's averaged around 5% of tuition, or the equivalent of 5%. The problem is that's pretty difficult to actually budget for within the SGA budget. That's a quite variable amount. And so what we just want to do was clear that up by essentially capping that around that 5% mark. So still an hourly rate, it's just allocated an amount that would equate up to 5% of tuition. And yeah, this is kind of our final recommendation chart. Max.
Yeah, so that chart is like the bulk of, like, you can distill everything else in the report to like, these are the changes, the above are what you would imagine as like the whereas clauses in a normal bill. And so you can see the 2016 recommendation, the 2019 recommendation, and then ours. So you have a little bit of context over the past 3 sets of changes that have been made to officers' compensations. And I think that's super interesting to see those over time and provide that context. So this will be sent out. Can we get that sent out to like everybody? So it's not like, oh, it's weird. So next steps going forward, right? It's really weird. This isn't a piece of legislation. This is the recommendation of the committee, and it stands until disapproved. So Senate has 4 weeks to pass a bill of disapproval. Yeah, a bill of disapproval. And that's a majority vote. You can think of it just like any other bill. And so Senate has to like draft that up, explain like, okay, cool, these are the issues we have with it. We disagree with the committee. If that passes, the committee then gets back together, addresses those concerns, changes stuff. And so if Senate wants to do that, they have 4 weeks to do that. And then whatever committee report is left standing after Senate has 4 weeks left to potentially disapprove it, then that's what goes into effect for the next year. So
Does anybody have any questions now about the changes or the process?
Leader Kid.
Yeah. Question for anyone who can answer it. So I was around when we had one allocations committee, and so when we had one allocations chair, what percentage were they at with their tuition before it was split into two? Can anyone answer that?
That's a great question.
They were at 50%, but I believe at that time that person was also the treasurer.
Yes. Okay, cool. Great.
Yeah. I had to call Jonathan Puchin on that one.
Good thought.
Senator Booz.
Yeah, can you remind me how much money the DEI chair is overseeing, and how much the tuition enhancements chair is overseeing?
The DEI chair is overseeing $175,000. The tuition enhancements chair is overseeing around $900,000.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't quite sure on that. But...
Obviously, there's not like an exact science to.
Right.
We're not calculating down to dollar managed what that looks like. It's more about the ongoing nature of committees and how they meet, because
Yeah, I think just to jump off that, one of the major considerations that we're looking at is the amount of time that these positions require of someone. I think that's kind of mentioned a little bit around, I've seen a few of these JCOC reports that by now, but a common thing is the fact that, depending on the amount of time that these positions require of the person seated in them and their ability to potentially have, a job outside of that, or what does their average workload look like? Not necessarily the amount of money they receive, but just the general workload they receive.
And I would just like to add, when we were making these determinations, we really looked at legislated responsibilities pretty exclusively. We took in a little bit of the greater context of what we thought the committee might achieve, but with a lot of these newer committees and the existing positions, we just went line by line with this is no longer a legislated responsibility for you, and this is now a legislated responsibility for you. So these numbers may seem off to you by just seeing them, but when you take into the context what exactly the bill did and what people are and aren't legislatively responsible for, we felt that these were the best numbers.
End of the day, JCOC compensations are not a value of how valuable we see those positions. It's simply a metric by which we try and make those positions equitable to allow somebody who otherwise would have to be working a job to maybe be able to hold those positions. So that's the point of JCOC compensation. It's not a ranking of how valuable we see any position. It's simply in order to make it so that people who otherwise might not be able to are able to hold those positions.
Alrighty, thanks. President Dowd.
What thought was given towards, and you might have mentioned this already, an out-of-state student body president or an out-of-state member of any of those elected?
That is an excellent question, and we did mention it briefly. So Dr. Lane was in the committee, and we know that he's been involved a little bit more on some of those conversations, and it's basically still up in the air. There's still some conversations being had about mechanisms that can be had either accounting-wise within the university level or higher in order to how to handle that. But as of right now, we didn't make any changes that affects that system. Right now, it's still the system that we have, which is kind of up in the air of we have a reserve basically within the SGA budget that is used to fund if we ever have the chance of an out-of-state student body president. So no changes made to that system, but those conversations are good to be had because it's kind of a whack system.
Alrighty, Leader Kid.
So I apologize. Can we re-clarify the elections commissioner spot? So what I'm reading is that historically it's been 5%, but I guess my question is, what if they do work more? Then what's going to happen with paying them or whatever? Or if anyone, sorry, I'm looking at you, but
Yeah. So last year I worked for Amy as a student worker, and I distinctly remember us sitting down with the JCOC report and her being like, what does this mean? Because it said just 5% hourly and nothing else. So that's why if you look down at this footnote here so our intention is that for the 6 weeks of election season, the elections commissioner can log 10 hours a week at a rate that adds out to 5% for that 60-hour time period that they can log. And that equates to about $460.
Time for questions has expired.
Chair Lynn.
I move to extend questions by 5 minutes.
Second.
Perfect. Any objections? Fantastic. Time for questions. We have 5 more minutes. Leader, who do you have a follow-up?
I do.
Can I?
Yes.
I was going to expand on that a little bit. To provide some context on how we reached that figure, one of the things that we talked about is that, like, especially with the new instant runoff voting system, it's really hard to predict exactly what the workload of the elections commissioner is going to be. Like, this term we have 4 candidates running in the presidential election, and that's going to go like all the way through now. But next term we could have 6, or we could have 2, or we could have 1. It's just hard to predict. Like in the old system, it was a little more easy to predict. Like, at this point, they're going to have exactly this much work to do, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why we made it sort of like a sliding scale of up to 10 hours a week, because there's a universe in which the elections commissioner could do like 1 hour of work a week, just depending on like how well the campaigns are running and how many campaigns there are. So that sort of provides a little bit of context on how we got to that like 10 hours a week. And we felt like that was a fair amount, because it could be a lot of work or it could be not very much work. And we didn't want to like limit it really low and make the hourly rate higher. And if you are mathematically inclined, it works out to about the federal minimum wage is what they're going to be getting paid.
Thanks, Evan. Do you still have a follow-up?
I do. Sorry. Confusion. I'm sitting in a different spot, so I'm disoriented. So what I'm hearing is that someone can be paid up to 10 hours per week, but let's say that someone works 1 hour 1 week, but then 19 hours the other week, then that will just average out together and they're all hunky-dory happy, right?
I think that's a question.
They would be set up within HRIS as an employee, so it would be within the pay period, which I guess that piece of it is unfortunate. I will say that every area has their own level of adherence to how they like to manually enter things into HRIS, and that would probably be at Amy's discretion.
Director Atchison.
So this is just out of curiosity. If the DEI chair, for example, was out of state, is that still 10% out of state cost or in-state cost, or is it 10% out of state?
Yeah, so for those on Zoom, the answer to that question was that we're still calculating based on in-state tuition. If any of the chairs or other compensated positions are out of state, we still use that in-state figure.
Does that, follow up?
Go ahead.
Does this now apply for like the student body president, or is that still?
Yeah, nothing that we like talked about adjusts student body president. So student body president is still 100% if they're out of state, but they're the only one that's ever been out of state comped.
Leader Kidd.
I'm back. Sorry, I guess my bottom line question was, should the elections commissioner need to work more than 10 hours, like consistently per the 6 weeks or whatever? What happens if that does happen? Like, does someone else take over those responsibilities then for those excess hours, or how does that get broken down?
I think it's important to think about the elections commissioner compensation the same that you would really like the student body president or like speaker's compensation, because it roughly equates to being close to the same. I mean, it's like $150 every other week, and I guess that would be the same as like attorney general compensation biweekly. So when I was in that position, we get like an hourly wage of $18 an hour or something, but you can only log 1 hour a day during a pay period. So then it ends up equaling the same, but it's no like true reflection of how much work you're doing. Yeah. So it's not a clock in and out situation. And I think that that's definitely an area that this provides at least a framework for how it's supposed to work, you know, compensating that person. But I definitely think in like a full JCOC year, there's a lot of opportunity to discuss like what do we want to count as like billable hours? You know, is that running elections meetings? Is that, you know, an hour counts as having a hearing, et cetera, and maybe defining that out a little bit better, rather than thinking that like every single thing that you do for that is included, because mostly what we were concerned about is like the years where there's a high volume of hearings and that person not being compensated anything.
And I do just want to.
Time for questions has expired.
Leader Kit.
I move extend the period for questions. Oh my gosh, Cinder let me so much about that. I move extend the time for questions by 5 minutes. Second. Please. Thank you.
Fantastic. Are there any objections? Perfect.
Okay, so I do just want to add on to what Hannah was saying, and sort of more to your point, Marcus. If you think about it, there are weeks when, like, me as ops chair or, like, Jacob as travel chair, they don't necessarily do the same number of hours of work that they do the previous week or the next week, but we still get compensated the same. So that's sort of how I was conceptualizing, like, the unfortunate circumstance in which there are more billable hours in a certain week. Like, I'm still getting paid the same dollar amount every single week, and that's the, like, kind of the headspace that I was coming from when we settled on that 5% hourly rate.
Yeah, and actually just a general thought to keep in mind is the fact that we are a special JCOC committee. You know, we are actually not the more regular committee that has more extended time to look over the total JCOC allocation. We were convened for specifically in response to this restructuring bill that came through, and so really we spent our short, time together focusing especially on those positions that were directly affected. I think actually elections commissioner is the only one that we kind of saw maybe a quick fix to, but something that we may be able to tackle in our short time. And, but overall, we really just focus on those positions that were changed directly.
One more question on this one, I promise I'm done. So then, when the elections commissioner logs their hours, who's the one approving them, or like where does that data go for tracking purposes?
So that is Kelly. She approves all of the SGA positions timesheets every 2 weeks.
Okay, perfect. Are there any further questions for everybody up here?
Can I just say something?
Yes, go.
Okay. I will invite any of you guys to submit a resolution of disapproval if you would like to. But I have one request of the body, and that's please do not mess with any position that did not change per our legislation last week. Because if you look at our committee membership, we have a Senate Ops Chair, a Student Services Fee Chair, and the incoming Attorney General. So if you mess with any of those things, we will have to start from scratch in between new terms, and it will be really ugly. So if you're thinking about doing any of those, I will buy you coffee and talk you out of it.
I will also add, if you are thinking of writing a resolution of disapproval, I really invite you to come speak to any of us, during the process of writing that or before you're writing that. If you have any other questions or if you come up with any other questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us and we can try to get those concerns addressed before you decide to introduce that to the floor. If you just want to introduce it to the floor, you're also more than welcome to do that.
And another thing to keep in mind is that the normal meeting of JCOC will occur next fall. So these are only a 1-year standing change from us, just again in response to those changes of the bill.
Alrighty, unless there are any more questions, thank you all so much. Do you have more?
Last thing, I promise.
Go right ahead.
The reduction from 500% to this 480 here, if you're wondering what happens to that extra 20%, that 20% in this instance for the next fiscal year, for fiscal year 23, would be saved in SGA reserves, which are not fabulous by any understanding. But that 20% would be held for now. And then when SGA is presenting their budget to student services fee for their fiscal year 24 through 26 budget, that's when the committee could look at that and say, all right, let's not overcharge students for compensation that's not being used, and they can make the reduction at that time if this is similar to the report that they have next year.
And that's happening next year, and next year's committee will be aware of these changes.
Okay, fantastic. Leader Kid, you have
I'm
another
so
question.
sorry. Can we go back up to the page that lists out the positions and who gets like a parking pass for free?
Marcus, are you running for office?
I'm just a concerned and curious student.
Is this it?
Asterisks denote parking passes.
Okay, cool. That was it. Thank you.
Senator Rook.
Okay, to clarify, this is a free parking pass?
Yes.
Yep. Provided for by university. And that's all, yeah.
Senator Booz.
Also, under my understanding, only like 3 or 4 of them have actually gotten parking passes. Is that correct?
Time for questions has expired.
Chair Lynn.
I move to extend questions by 5 minutes.
Second.
Are there any objections? Okay, 5 more minutes.
So like for personal context on the parking pass situation, last year as Speaker Pro Tem, I had to buy my own parking pass, even though my office was in here and I like had to park in the garage unless I wanted to walk wherever. This year, I think all 7 of us in leadership got a free K-Pass, which was a blessing from God theirself.
The K-Pass is really nice too.
It's so nice.
For students.
Senator Rook.
What's a K-Pass?
You can park anywhere you want, basically.
Not anywhere you want. It's a service level parking pass, so you can park in like faculty lots, staff lots. You can park in off-campus, resident, and the garage 24 hours a day.
Senator Rook.
What's another route to get one of these K-Passes?
They market $950 or something like that.
Or you be one of
Yeah, you could run for a position, Austin. I know you're graduating.
Yeah, I'll be going.
Or you could become an employee of the university.
Friendly tip, don't run for positions because of their compensation.
Yeah.
Leader Kid.
So then, sorry. So I guess my history with it, I've just seen different positions have them and not have them or whatever. So who is it? Just like a parking office that's like, here you go, bless you with parking passes, or Maggie do?
I don't really know. All I know is the goddess Amy showed up one day and said, here's your parking pass. And I said, thank you so much, Amy.
Marcus, so far as I understand, the SGA budget covered our passes, but that I'm like 60% sure that's true.
We don't purchase.
Oh, never mind. Then
We don't purchase them. They are free, waived. And they. So back in 2019, there was a reduction to only doing branch heads for 2 years. And then I think, the recommendation was we kept it in the report to continue doing all 7 people in leadership. And I think just pushed harder and it worked.
okay, fantastic. Are there any further questions for the speakers? In that case, thank you all so much for your presentation and answering all of our questions.
Mike, you want this one back?
Alrighty, now that that's true, are there any further committee chairs that would like to give a report this evening? Alrighty, seeing none, we'll now move into directors' reports. Are there any directors who would like to give a report? Director Cohn.
No, I was giving a little update. Okay, so I'm just gonna give like a little legislative update from what happened this week. Well, I guess before that, I'll kind of talk about like my responsibilities. So March 9th is Kansas Higher Ed Day. So there's a couple of us in here that are gonna be going down, but we're meeting with about 14 legislators right now. We're trying to increase that number. But our main topics of discussion are the value of higher education, since the governor proposed a increase in higher education, so we kind of want to sell the value on that. Mental health resources, and then retention, which Dr. Lynn was really ambitious about in his hearing on Tuesday. So February 28th through March 3rd is K-State on the Hill. K-State will go to DC and advocate on behalf of higher education. We're still working on reaching out to a lot of legislators, so just know that's in the plans. Yeah, I'll kind of just get into what specifically happened. Senate Bill 464 is a bill to eliminate the Kansas Educational Building Fund, and that would instead come out of the general state fund. I don't know if that's going to be supported just because it's a lot more work. So Senate Bill 450 changes the structure of selling endowment. So we currently have a lot of our buildings were gifted to us, and we're working on selling this. However, the current bylaws, statutes, whatever you want to call it, require us to go and like file legislation for us to sell. So this would just change it. Let's go through Kansas Board of Regents, and then once that passes, there's another House bill that would allow us to sell that property. House Bill 2670. There's some chatter at the Capitol. It's not confirmed, but there's some professors requiring vaccination status from higher education universities and other business entities. So that's basically just requiring no discrimination there. And then, this was kind of interesting. The Senate Education Committee had a couple hearings this week on behalf of Lori Kelly's nominees for the Kansas Board of Regents. And that happened last June. Those Carlisle Winter and Cynthia Lane. Carlisle was the only one that was recommended. So I don't know how that's going to look, but that's kind of interesting. And then this is just the really last thing I want to hit on. House Bill 2641. This was brought up this last week. And it prohibits the Kansas Board of Regents from fixing a higher rate for out-of-state tuition students. So that basically eliminate all out-of-state tuition. I don't think this is going to pass, but I think it's super interesting. And Kansas is like the first state to propose such a bill. So, also, if you guys care about K-State Salina, I think that guy's there. I think they approved the hall, the residence hall down at K-State Salina. So, that is about it.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Are there any questions for Logan? In that case, are there any further directors who'd like to give a report? Director Grolmes.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to hop up here and thank everyone who participated in the whole trivia giveaway on the Instagram. That was really exciting for me, and thankful to Maggie and Grant Hill for passing that opportunity along, because it got us a lot of engagement, and that is super exciting to see those follower numbers go up, particularly right before the elections are happening next week. So I just want to thank everyone for that engagement. And second, not to steal Reed's thunder or anything, but we all know that elections are on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I will be posting a graphic and just share. Use your own personal experience and stories if you're comfortable doing so, to just try and share that with anyone. We want to, get that civic engagement up and get people excited about how their vote could mean change. So please share that and encourage your friends, everyone to vote. If you're in a class and the professor or instructor is okay with you making an announcement, please ask, because if they say no, that's fine, but at least you asked. So just be a really big advocate for SGA next week and get people to vote. Yeah, thank you.
Woo! Are there any questions for Rachel? Okay, fantastic. Commissioner Cruzen, do you have a report?
Yes. Get him up at the version.
Thank you. So we were just wanting to go over some reapportionment numbers. We got the data from the 20th day numbers from Andrew. Do you know the office that gave us the numbers?
Yeah, it's now. This is actually public, or at least public for K-State students. It's from the Office of Institutional Research and Assessment. So you can go to their page on K-State and then go to the interactive fact book and then drill down into the Manhattan campus to see the numbers.
Yeah. So if you want to go ahead and just present your math stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My math stuff is more crazy this year than I thought. So we actually dropped almost 1,000 students from the fall to the spring. which caused one additional swap. Yeah, as you can see, the apportionment calculations start with, getting those numbers for each college. The graduate school gets broken out separately, and vet med also just does as well. And so if you could go to like 90 or 80%, Maggie, that would be great. So you can divide the 60 seats by the 15,000-ish people enrolled in the Manhattan campus and get your standard divisor, which is basically how many seats you have how many students you have per seat, which is around 254 students actually, which is a fairly low number. And then you can use that to generate the standard quotas. And so if you look, agriculture would have 6.59 seats, which you can't really do. So in this system with the lowest remainder method, you end up rounding that down, and then you generate a remainder, and you rank those remainders from largest to smallest. So in this system, for instance, the graduate school actually has the largest remainder with 0.9585. And so it gets an extra seat, and you go through until you reach 60. So in this case, it resulted in basically two swaps. The graduate school added one seat, 8 to 9. The business administration school added one seat, 8 to 9. And then the colleges of agriculture and health and human sciences both lost a seat, going from 7 to 6. And so, those are the major changes, according to the algorithm that we enshrined in law, actually. So, if you got any questions, though, I'd love to answer them. I don't know if you had anything else, Reed.
Yes, I think there's a question, and then also the IRV example ballot that was on the reply there.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you both so much. Senator Byrne.
So is this a proposal? Is this going into place? Is
Yeah.
this the elections next week?
Yeah, this is going to happen for the elections next week.
Okay.
Yep, so every spring semester, because elections happen on the 30th day, I'm not sure if that's the exact day, but point being it's after the 20th day, and so the seats that are allocated is based off the 20th day numbers that we get. So we have to do a bunch of quick math before the elections happen to make sure that all of the seats are correctly allocated. And we can't do it off of fall numbers because, like Andrew said, 1,000 students were enrolled in fall and are no longer enrolled in spring. So because of that, we can't give them representation in the Senate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Alrighty, perfect. Senator Bellamy.
Yeah, do you have the final numbers for how many people are running at each college for Senate?
Yes, I do. I am curious if I don't think I emailed this to Maggie, unfortunately, but let me.
No, we did not, sadly.
I have them somewhere. I think I texted it to somebody.
Are they repeating for election?
You are so right, Maggie.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, I can verbally read those off to you. In the College of Agriculture, we have 8 students running. In Architecture, Planning, and Design, 0. In Colleges of Arts and Sciences, 22. College of Business, we have 8. College of Education, 3. College of Engineering, 10. College of Health and Human Sciences, 4. Vet Med, 0. Grad School, 4. That equates to 59. Some students that are there are not eligible and will be taken off the ballot.
When was the last time we reapportioned?
It was this time last year.
Do we do it every year?
Yes.
I missed that. That went over my head. Sorry.
Yeah, and I could, the spreadsheet actually has the spring 2021 enrollment numbers, so I could, you could see how we reapportioned there as well. We were testing out 4 methods at the time. We used the largest remainder method there too. And this is also basically 2 years of reapportionment because we had missed the previous year. So that was when AP Design and Vet Med got 2 seats, as well as the other changes you can see there.
Okay. Senator Vogelmoor on the Zoom.
Yeah, I was just curious as far as the amount of people that filed. Do you remember what the total was for who filed last year? 59, I guess, just seems low, but maybe that's on par.
I don't remember, but I agree it does seem lower than last year.
Mid-60s, I thought.
That's a great question. I'm going to go ahead and pull up that email that I have from Kelly. I think I have it pulled up. In 2021, we had 93 people run for Senate. 2020, we had 76, to give you the past couple years.
Okay, are there any further questions for the speakers? Coordinator Grills.
This is definitely something you've already said. What was the full number of people that ran this term?
So if you add up all the people running for Senate, it's 59. Awesome. And
Director Atchison.
What do you suspect might be causing those lower numbers?
That's a great question. There's a lot of different things that kind of add up to all that. I think it is really just a symptom of a greater whole of students just not being super engaged. Also, we have dropping enrollment numbers, which means we have less students, which means we have less student leaders on campus. So I think all of that just kind of adds up. And yeah, I think we really tried as a committee to recruit a whole lot and advertise SGA. We can only do that to a certain degree. If people don't want to run, they don't want to run. So.
Alrighty, thanks. Any further questions? Leader Kid.
Actually, she was first. Sorry.
Oh.
If we know of someone who wants to run for Senate but didn't meet the filing deadline, how do we advise them to go about that?
That is a great question. Any student can write themselves in, get their friends to write themselves, or get their friends to write them in on the ballot. They can do that. And for the numbers that we have, it's pretty reasonable, especially if they're in the grad school, vet med, architecture. They could just write themselves in and they would probably get it. And if they want even better odds, just get 3 or 4 of their friends. And they would definitely get it. And even if they're in like a more competitive office like Arts and Sciences, which has 22, only 13 seats, they can still write themselves in. And if they get like 10 names, even just 1 name, they might eventually get called and could serve.
Time for questions has expired.
Chairland.
I move to extend questions for 5 minutes.
Any objections? Perfect, 5 more minutes.
Yeah, and if I could remark on that too, I mean, from my previous experience, when I was ops chair, I just remember reaching out to people who had 5 write-in votes in a bunch of colleges fairly soon after the election. You know, like especially in like College of Business, which now has 9 spots available for 8 people who have filed. That's a great opportunity to get like, 5 to 7 write-in votes and be that 9th person.
Leader Kid.
So my question is, for students that have more than 1 major, so as in like they're a dual majored student, how does that work with this?
That's a great question. It is their primary major. You can indicate that. Is there a better way to explain that?
Yeah, I believe there's a way you can indicate which major is your primary in cases. I have not had that problem. Creighton, do you remember how you did that, or? Okay.
We go off the primary major, so whatever that means. It might be based off of credit hours or something like that. But yes, primary major.
Okay. Any further questions? In that case, thank you both so much. Alrighty. Are there any further directors tonight that would like to give a report? Director Diaz de Leon.
Yeah, good evening. SGA, what a beautiful evening. And a lot of beautiful people talking tonight. It's a great night to talk about stuff, right? Get situated here. Cool, so as promised, last week, I said I was going to give you all a more kind of like in-depth report over kind of our menstrual product initiative that we were going over of making menstrual products free for students in bathrooms throughout campus. So I'm going to kind of dive into that a little bit. We kind of made a little mission statement with this, talking about how we were ensuring that all students at Kansas State University had their basic needs met so they can prosper in classwork, personal wellness, and being connected on campus. The implementation of this project is to ensure that the true groundwork can be made in an effort towards a path of total sustainability through K-State's facilities, which is our end goal, right? If we go to the next slide, please. Cool. So we're going to kind of touch base a little bit on organizations and entities that have already been doing, work, who've already been putting this stuff out, right? Organizations such as, our Social Justice Alliance, who exclusively focuses on supplying menstrual products to bathrooms on, I think it's like the gender-neutral bathrooms on the first floors of residence halls. Cats Covered also does some work on this as well. The Morris Family Multicultural Student Center also stocks their bathrooms. And then we have some organizations that have really worked on, trying to get this thing out, trying to make this, a university-wide initiative, such as the President's Commission on the Status of Women. They have a subcommittee that is, they directly work on stuff like this, as well as multiple independent entities, including anonymous donors, faculty and staff throughout multiple colleges, and students, right? So there's obviously a lot of folks who are trying to, we're trying to get this thing through, right? We want to make some real progress on this. We want this to be a thing. It's just a matter of getting everybody on the same page, right? So that's kind of been the focus, as I mentioned last week, trying to get everybody on the same page about things, so that we can have some real direction with this as well. If you go to the next slide, por favor. So one of the organizations that I really put a large focus into researching was the Social Justice Alliance. They've been doing some great stuff with this. They were kind of established, so what they did is there's this website called the Period Project they had reached out to, in which they supplied them with 1,500 products back in 2020. But when the pandemic hit, it kind of set things back a little bit, right? As it set all of us back, so with good reason. And so, like I said, the cool thing about this project, it's 100% student-driven. These folks are actually the ones that go in within the bathrooms and actually supply the bathrooms. They're the ones that restock them, which is really cool that we have students that care enough about that, right? We want to go ahead and give them, as their government, some support in that as well. So yeah, I listed all, the residence halls if you forgot which ones they were, if it's been a while or if you're still there, which is rad. And then as well as these folks, they store their products in the Multicultural Student Lounge. So if you don't know where that's at, it's in Kramer on the first floor, where they kind of have a little section where they have all these tubs, right, where they have a bunch of their products in. If you go into the next slide, please, this is kind of the stock they have right now, right? So this is everything that they've been working with, that they've been supplying the bathrooms with. As you can see, there's a variety of products there. They're all quality, and they were all donated, right? These were all donated. They didn't have to spend a dime for them. They just requested them, and they were delivered, and then they went off with it from there. They're running low on products. If you go to the next slide, so this is kind of the setup that they have within each of the bathrooms that they stock. This isn't necessarily kind of like, of course, after talking to them for a little bit and, getting their kind of, their perspective and their advice as far as like things that they would change, we would definitely take a different approach as far as, our more of a campus-wide initiative. But, just after, getting an update from them today, they had set this up in one of their bathrooms, and within a week, it was all gone. So you might be asking, like, well, how do they know it's all gone? They have somebody go in there every day to go check to see if, like, there's still product in there or whatnot. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that there's kind of a little card. This card is within every single basket, right? So you could even scan that QR code if you want right now to see what it presents folks with. So basically, what it tells folks is, if this is empty, let us know which bathroom you're in. We'll go ahead and we'll go in there and we'll restock it. Along with that as well, it gives folks the opportunity for folks who live in the residence halls that if, they need products or they can't afford them, that they can, request them right there and they will deliver it to them at their residence hall. I asked what that process looks like for folks who don't live in the residence halls, if folks who don't live in the residence halls could still, ask for them. And they said yes, but the stipulation with that is that the intention of the donation was for students in the residence halls. So it gets a little murky with that. And so they're trying to be a little careful on how they go about doing that. But they're trying to, meet everybody's needs as well. So there have been instances where they have been okay with, supplying other students with these supplies as well. So, so what the heck? Where does SGA walk into this, right? They're already doing a lot with that, right? It seems like they have it under control. Not necessarily. These folks are students as well, right? They have a classwork. They have all the organizations they're involved in, as I'm sure all of us
I'm
are
sorry,
involved in
time
as well.
has expired.
That's okay.
Chair Lynn.
I'm going to extend the speaker's time by 10 minutes.
Cool.
Any objections? 10 more minutes, Josh.
Go Cats, thank you. So, where does SGA kick in, right? Well, SCTE has been gracious enough to, kind of give me some leeway with some funding here so that we can, make this not only an initiative that is branching off of what's going on in the residence halls, but hopefully in some major buildings within campus, we can also see this become a deal, right? We can also see this come to fruition within major buildings. Not every single building as of right now, right? Which I know was kind of like, was the first initial goal, but we want to start, with some quality work on a smaller scale. So, of course, with the funding boost that we would go to STEE, we would make some ground there, as well as, funding would go more towards dispensers and a variety of quality products free of charge to students. So, back to that mission statement that we have right there. This is really focused on, really just meeting folks' basic needs, because this is a basic need. And as soon as we can get the ball rolling on this, I have without a doubt that the university and facilities wouldn't have a problem of continuing to sustain this, right? Because that's the end goal of this, is to kind of start off in a position to where we can show folks that this is a real need. And if we can show them the numbers that they're putting out, just with the Social Justice Alliance, with how often they're having to restock their bathrooms, and as far as, the same deal that's going to go with us and how we're going to be restocking these as well, and we can actually put numbers behind it, we'll find that, we'll have a really good argument going into it as to why we need this. So obviously, right, this project is still in its infancy, right? I can't do this by myself, and I'm just, an ignorant man, and I need support from folks who are passionate about this. Even if this isn't something that directly affects you, right? If you're in that out group looking into this, I still would appreciate your input. I would still appreciate your 2 bits, and everything that goes into it as well. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that I've got a QR code, right? That goes to a Google form. I want to know what you have to say about this. I want to know what you have to think about. How should we implement this, right? What would be the most effective way of implementing this project? Where do you think you should see these dispensers at? Which bathrooms should we put these in, right? These are issues that, while might not affect you directly, will affect the classmates that you have sitting next to you in your classes as well, whether that's in Bluemont or Waters, where you guys have the cool urinals with the pedals. Stuff is cool over there. Yeah, I know, right? Neat stuff. These are things that are really relevant to all students here at K-State, and we want to hear what you got to say, right? So if you go to the next slide as well, that QR code will still be on the next slide. But this is just, if you want to contact me, if you want to make it a little more personal and you really want me to know a message that's coming from you, I would love to hear it. I'd love to, we can go get breakfast together, we can get coffee or something, a Diet Coke, I don't care. Let me know. This is how I'm going to look. If you don't contact me, and if you have concerns, and if you press the slide one more time, Maggie, you'll see that's how happy I'll be if you do end up contacting me with your concerns or whatnot, right? But yeah, with that, I stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Josh. Chair Lynn.
What is the plan for how all of this is going to get distributed to bathrooms?
Yeah, absolutely. So after, we kind of get more details finalized with how we're going to see the money come in and whatnot, we're going to really identify where there's a lot of student movement. But at the same time, we really want to make it super public so folks know that it's there, right? So we want to, I think one of the initial ideas we had was really focusing on buildings like the Union, right? So in the bathrooms here in the Union, making sure that we have the access to those in the Union, and other larger buildings where you'll see more of your lecture halls. So that could be, Cardwell, 101 over by Bluemont, classrooms such as that. And so making it public as well to where, and kind of dispersed throughout all of campus as well. So, if somebody's on one side of campus, they're like, oh my gosh, I might need access to something like that, they'll know which building to go to, right? And so that's kind of where we're at right now, but that's kind of why I need folks' input as well, so we kind of know where that might be.
I have a follow-up.
Go right ahead.
Is the plan to have facilities,
that's the ultimate goal.
Standard custodians and stuff?
Yes.
Use that? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Senator Bellamy.
Yeah, sorry if you mentioned this, but where does the Social Justice Alliance get the money to fund the Period Project from?
Yeah, it was all donated to them. So they didn't actually pay for any of it. All of their supplies are donated, and so the reason why they're kind of finding a lot of issues with it right now, and the reason why we can't really take an approach to that, is because that organization is currently backed up like none other. Just not only with supply chain management issues with COVID, but just with the high demand, because it's become something really popular. And they did apply for this back in 2020, or basically it was late 2019 when they applied for it initially. And so with COVID, with the year, folks not really being on campus, they were able to really make that product stretch. They were really able to stretch it out. But now they're kind of at a point where they're kind of finding that they're a little limited and they're going to run out soon. So yeah.
Alrighty. Yep. Chair Lynn.
Do you happen to know if they see
trends as far as what specific products get taken more often than others? Like, for example, like cardboard applicators versus plastic applicators and stuff like that?
So I don't have any specifics for you. However, I do know just kind of what I mentioned earlier, and I can find that out for you as well. All of it is gone, by the time they get back to it. So I don't know which ones are in a higher demand, and I'm sure that's something that they probably observed. So I can get you in contact with those folks as well, and I can also ask, and then I can get back to you on that one. But yeah, good question.
Alrighty, Senator Booz.
Yeah, have you, I guess this would probably come through the SAT application as well, but what have your conversations, if you've had them with facilities, been like since you're relying on them picking this up after the 4-year period?
So I have reached out a few times, haven't had a lot of dialogue in that sense, as far as like actual plans or whatnot, like structured, like every time I've reached out, basically I haven't heard much back. And I'm sure that for a plethora of reasons, I'm sure it's not that they're actively trying not to, but I needed to get something turned in, and so I needed to get that through. So based on numbers, comparing with like other universities and seeing what they've implemented, along with just, doing our own research as far as, cost of what these items would be in bulk, and like the cost of dispensers for, kind of the range that we were trying to implement it. That's what we based a lot of our numbers on for funding. So the goal is, that, we've already seen this be successful in the residence halls, where students are supplying them. I would hope that we could come to some sort of an agreement with facilities, so that we could have some sort of partnership there, especially, if we're providing, the resources and whatnot for it as well. But yeah, as of right now, those conversations have been very limited.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Follow up, Peyton.
Do we have a plan as far as like where they're gonna be, where all the products are gonna be purchased from?
Yeah, so we have some quotes from some websites. I don't have them on me at the moment right now, but we did compare them with a number of different, not only just like websites or whatnot, but like I said, like other universities. I think UT over there, horns down, has done some good work with the project, very similar to what we're trying to do here, where it wasn't necessarily the Student Governing Association, but it was a group on campus that went about doing this. And so I was able to, reach out to some folks over there and kind of see, what they were doing with this. And they gave me some really good feedback. Granted, I didn't get to as many schools as I wanted to, but they seemed pretty legitimate in kind of what they were putting out. There's like a newspaper article I think you can look up too, and it'll tell you a lot about them. I couldn't tell you what it was off the top of my head, but it was really informative about, their process and how they went about doing this. But yeah.
Alrighty. Senator Byrne.
This might be an obnoxious question, but when you're figuring out like the spec sheets for what you're ordering, can you request no cardboard applicators?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? As somebody who grew up in I was having this conversation. I grew up with all girls in my house, where I have like 3 sisters.
I'm so sorry. Time for questions is expired.
Carolyn.
I would like to extend time to my 5 minutes.
No,
are there any objections?
I object.
Here you go.
Senator Booz. You object to the motion to extend time?
Extending time for questions by 5 minutes.
Just when it gets saucy.
Peyton, are you agreeable to doing 5 instead of 10?
I said 5.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay.
Said 5.
He's objecting to it anyway.
I mean, we could do, less than 5, like maybe.
If you're objecting to 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I guess we can do a quick hand vote on that. Anyone anyone in favor of extending questioning period?
Does there need to be a second?
I heard a second.
Debatable motion.
To the objection.
There was no second to the objection.
I'll second.
Yeah, we can just move on. I think we're good.
Okay, there is a second to the objection.
Yeah.
Everyone in favor of extending the questioning period by 5 minutes, please raise your hand. Anyone opposed to extending the questioning period by 5 minutes, please raise your hand. Okay, you got 5 more minutes.
No, I know. Yeah, so I noted that, and I would love that. That's the type of feedback we want through the QR code as well. So let me know, preferences or whatnot, personal experiences. I was just gonna say, growing up with a bunch of women in my house, I brought it to attention to them, and they gave me an earful about what or whatnot to do in this situation. So yeah, any other questions?
All right. Seeing no more questions, Josh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Are there any further directors tonight who would like to give a report? Alrighty, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of allocations. Up this week, we have Bill 64, on-campus allocation to their open house funds, which was referred favorably, 8-0, and Bill 65, travel allocation to the Mechanical Contractors Association of America, referred favorably by travel allocations, 8-0. Is there a motion to approve these allocations, Senator Bellamy?
I move to approve the allocations.
Seconded.
Any objections? Alrighty, both of those allocations are going to stand approved. Now we get to move into final action. First up, Bill 21-2266, amendments to the KSU-SGA bylaws regarding speaking privileges of Phase 1 interns. Will the author please come forward? Leader Thomas.
Motion to bulk roll call Bills 66 and 68.
Perfect. Are there any objections to bulk roll calling Bills 66 and 68? Okay, perfect.
Can I have a minute to read these so I can know?
No, we're not going to go straight to those.
Oh, never mind. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Andrew, have any changes been made?
No changes have been made.
Alrighty, you have first rights to debate.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to debate on Bill 66 only because we just bulk roll called them. But I think Bill 66 in particular is the one you should support, even if you don't support any of the other bills that I've submitted this week or last week or the week before that, because it's almost entirely a bill that's making a minor change to the bylaws and to the intern program. This, the only thing this does is eliminate an additional restriction on whether interns can sponsor legislation. And then it also eliminates a reference either direction as to whether interns have the ability to make motions in Student Senate. So that would leave it down to the statutes to decide that. And so that's why I think that there is basically a case for voting for Bill 66, even if you don't like Bill 68, because it would make more sense for all of the speaking privileges legislation to be affecting one place. The fact that it's in this section of the bylaws referring to interns overall doesn't make as much sense, and I think that there's a reason to remove it, even if you don't support any of my other legislation. So I'm going to yield my time here, and then when we get to Bill 68, I'll kind of lay out more about why I think we should make the overall change that I'm making. But I think that even if you dislike that overall change, there's not really a reason to keep this stuff in the bylaws. So thank you.
Alrighty, thanks, Andrew. We'll now seek a speech in the negative on Bill 66. Any further speeches in the positive on Bill 66? Any speeches at all on Bill 66? Okay, perfect. Since we bulk roll called Bill 66 and 68, makes the most sense to me that we're going to consider Bill 68 next. Andrew, the author, were any changes made to Bill 68?
68, I don't believe so either.
Alrighty, then you have first right to debate on this one.
Yeah, so overall, I think you should vote yes on this. And I think you should vote yes on this for three major reasons. First, I believe that it's more consistent with the heuristic that I've come up with to explain how we've expanded and contracted with our speaking rights over time. Second, I don't believe that this is a major constraint on anyone. I think it's very unlikely that anyone is going to utilize the privileges that are already provided. And I think even if people want to use these privileges, there are multiple other ways of getting the floor that make up for any lack of use of these privileges. And so I want to lay out kind of all three of those things on Bill 68, and then really those are the same points that I'll be using on Bill 67 as well. So the first bit is that I think that this is most consistent. Now, when the interns gained speaking privileges in 1987, the intern program was a very different beast. It was only 12 people, and it was very, it was almost like a real intern. There's actually a reference from 1984 or something, where it's that student senators could send their interns to get them soda or whatever, which is kind of ridiculous now that we think about it nowadays. But, a lot of things have changed, but the idea that the, interns would be approved by Student Senate has stayed the same up until my intern year, which was when we changed it to have a two-phase system. Phase one was just to learn about SGA and to think about, like, where do you want to get involved, in the student senate, in the judicial branch, or in the executive branch. And then phase two was when you were approved and you got deep into actually getting involved in the student senate in whatever branch you chose. And to me, it makes much more sense for phase two interns, as I once was, to be the ones to exercise both motions and speaking rights in student senate. Phase one interns have not been approved by student senate yet, and that is the historically consistent standard by which we have given out speaking privileges. Yet, when the intern program was changed, we didn't make that very actually kind of small change. And so I think that it makes the most sense to do it now. The second part of this is that I believe that it's very unlikely, and in fact, I don't remember ever speaking in Student Senate as a phase one intern. I'm not entirely sure whether I made a motion or not. If so, I only made one. And so, like, as a phase one intern, I was not very active. As a phase two intern, as you slowly get more and more involved and more active in Student Senate, it makes much more sense. And I would not want to remove speaking rights or the ability to make motions from phase two interns. And so, you know, I agree, like, that this is very unlikely to actually impinge upon anyone's privileges or desires. And then finally, even if it does, there are multiple other ways of gaining the floor. There are the intern coordinators, who I'm sure would be willing to let a phase one intern speak or make a motion, as well as first open period, which is explicitly for people without speaking rights or speaking privileges to gain the floor on any issue they desire. And so overall, like, I believe that this is a historically consistent step that we can take. I believe it doesn't impinge upon anyone's rights or desires. And even if it does, there are multiple other ways of getting the floor that are not more restrictive than being willing to stand up and debate. And so overall, like, I don't see a reason to vote no, and I urge you to vote yes.
Alrighty, thanks for that debate, Andrew. I'm now seeking speeches in the negative on Bill 68. Chair Long.
Point of information. We are saying speaking privileges include the right to make motions, yes?
To my information, that is how it's defined.
I believe that's correct. Where is that enumerated? Because I'm looking through the statutes and I can't find it.
Right, Max, do you have some information on this? This is a question I wrestle with every single year. It's never talked about. I've looked in Robert's rules. It doesn't really particularly talk about it there because, like, nowhere else, this is a weird place where we, like, allow people to debate, but they don't have a vote. So it's kind of weird. In practice, we've always let people with speaking privileges make motions because most of the time it's stuff like incidental, like, it's not a big deal. Like, I could make motions usually, but I could because I have speaking rights, but I don't have a vote, which is odd compared to the rest of the world.
Thank you for that clarification, Max.
My pleasure.
Are there any speeches in the negative on Bill 68? Any further speeches in the positive on Bill 68? Anyone with any thoughts to share at all? Alrighty, fantastic. With that, we'll move into a bulk roll call vote on Bills 66 and 68. Ariana, when you're ready.
Byrne,
Pass.
Bannister,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes by proxy.
Bellamy,
Yes to both?
Binkley,
I will pass by proxy.
Blood,
Yes to all.
Booze,
Yes.
Byrne, Byrne, Callow,
Pass by proxy.
Compton, Cranford, DeMott,
Yes, vote.
Doc, Dunlap,
Yes,
Insero,
Yes to both.
Esslinger,
Yes to both.
Fields,
Yes to both.
Buss,
Oh, yes to both by proxy.
Gann,
Yes to both.
Glasscock,
Yes to both.
Heatherman,
Yes to both.
Holland,
Yes to both by proxy.
Hotzel,
Yes to both.
Jambunathan,
Yes, vote by proxy.
Panic. Apologies. Kalarikial,
Yes to both.
Kidd,
Yes to both.
Koch,
Yes to both.
Kramer,
Yes to both by proxy.
Lister,
Yes to both by proxy.
Long,
Yes to both.
Lynn,
Yes to both.
Marquez,
Yes to both by proxy.
Mayor, McPhee,
Yes to both.
Nelson,
Yes to both.
Pinedo Gomez,
Yes to both.
Porter,
Yes to both.
Prester, Richenberg,
Yes to both.
Riffle,
Yes to both.
Rook,
Yes to 66, pass, and 68.
Roth,
Yes to both by proxy.
Salmon,
Yes to both.
Schoenhorst,
Yes to both by proxy.
Shear,
Yes to both.
Schindler,
Yes to both.
Spiegel,
Yes to both.
Stout,
Yes to both by proxy.
Sisma,
Yes to both.
Thomas,
Yes to both.
Vulgamore,
Yes to both.
Wallace, Warren,
Yes to both by proxy.
Willis Jackson,
Yes to both.
Willis Reese,
Yes to both.
Zhao. Okay, I'm coming back to those who passed. Bane?
Yes to both. Did you hear that?
Yes, thank you. And then Rook on 68?
Yes.
Awesome.
For Kahlo, I passed by proxy before.
So sorry.
That's going to be a yes to both. Thank you.
Kahlo, yes to both.
I think Parker's proxy as well.
In the chat?
Like Parker was proxy on one.
Yeah, also Binkley, I passed. I'll do yes to both as well.
Thank you. Any others who I may have forgotten passed or were in the chat who I did not see? I don't think I did actually.
Yes to both and then yes to both by proxy, I'm not sure.
Mayor, who are you proxying for? Mason Holland. Mason Prester? How embarrassing.
He's not here.
Anyways, on a vote of 50 to 0, this passes. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Ariana. With that, we'll move into debate on Bill 212267, amendments to the KSU SGA Constitution regarding speaking privileges of student organizations. Will the author please come forward? Have any changes been made?
That would also be no.
Alrighty, you have first right to debate.
All right, I think the argument for this change is very, very similar, and in fact is likely stronger than the argument for the change that you already voted on and made. That it's most consistent with historical practice, that very few, if any, people have ever exercised this privilege, and that there are multiple other ways of getting to the floor. So first, let's talk about the consistency of this. When I discovered that the KSU SGA Constitution had the ability for student organization presidents to speak on the floor independently. I honestly thought that this would have been added in the 1970s or the 1980s when student government was actually involved in setting the rules for student organizations. But no, instead this was added in 2017 as an opportunity and an effort to increase engagement among student organizations. And so, student organizations are even less involved with SGA than interns are nowadays. Yes, we give them money, and we maybe should be more involved with them. But we don't determine the rules by which these presidents get selected at all. In fact, the administration is closer to determining those rules than any other group on campus. The second piece is that I don't believe anyone has ever used this, at least since my time as a student senator began in 2019. I don't remember any student organization president using this privilege to speak directly. If anything, like during the debate over UPC, I think I remember people referring UPC members their speaking rights, as opposed to the president of UPC or the other officers of UPC coming up and saying that they could speak of their own accord. If only 2 years after this was passed, this has obviously not been implemented, and in fact, the people who would have been using this privilege were now actually completely ignoring it, then I would say that this did not work as a policy, and that very few, if any, people have used this. And then finally, as I mentioned, there are multiple other ways of getting onto the floor as a student body, as a president of a student organization. For instance, there is First Open Period, which was created by Bill 7983, explicitly to allow students who do not have speaking privileges to have the ability to have the floor. Now it's used for other purposes nowadays as well, but that purpose is still there, and it still is explicitly set apart for people without speaking privileges in the governing documents. Additionally, I'm sure that there's tens, if not 100 people who would be willing to give those student body presidents the ability to get on the floor tonight or at any time if they had something that was very relevant to them, or even for other reasons. I know I would, and if you want the floor, I'm more than willing to give you my speaking rights on this debate. So, and then finally, I did make sure to reach out to presidents of student organizations that I knew personally. I reached out to 4 people, and of the only person who I actually had an opportunity to speak to face-to-face, as opposed to the other 3 who I reached out to via email. He was okay with this. So that's very weak evidence. I understand that. But I do think that overall, this isn't a consistent piece of our governing documents, that nobody has used this, and that even if this would be useful, there are many other ways that are not that much harder or even maybe easier that they could have the floor. So thank you, and I hope you vote yes.
Alrighty, thanks for that debate, Andrew. We'll now seek speeches in the negative on this bill. Chair Lynn.
I raised you a point of information. Is this, it just says student organizations? Do we know if that's departmental, independent, or both?
I assume that the term student organization means all student organizations, which would include both ISOs and DSOs.
You're good to go, Peyton.
Okay. I feel like I've made this really, really clear in the past that I will very vehemently come up here and fight anytime this body is trying to take speaking rights away from really anybody. I said this when we were debating the judicial speaking rights bill a couple of weeks ago, and I'll say it again tonight. If what you got out of anything that anybody said that night is that you think there are people trying to get rid of our ability to, have people come and talk, I don't think you've been listening. I don't believe that this body gains anything at all from limiting the number of voices that we hear on this floor.
we've debated other things in this term, like just a couple of months ago. So the faculty senate seats, for example, weren't filled for several years. There was a bill that we put up trying to get rid of those faculty senate seats because they hadn't been filled. No one was taking advantage of them. And this body decided to vote that down, and we kept the faculty senate seats. If we're going to be staying consistent with the things that we've voted on in the past as a body, I don't believe that we should be voting yes on this legislation tonight either. Even if there are no organization presidents that have come in the last couple of years to talk, I don't believe that there's any harm in continuing to allow them to have that voice. Like I said earlier, I do not believe that this body gains anything by limiting the number of people that we are allowing to have a voice in front of us. Frankly, I think that that comes from a position of a little bit of superiority, honestly. Just because we are here does not make us any more qualified than anybody else to be having a voice and talking about what they care about. We have the power to make change, and I think that we should be trying our best to allow voices of other students at any opportunity.
Thank you so much for that debate, Peyton. We'll now go back to speeches in the positive on Bill 67. Are there any people who would like to speak in the positive? I don't have a placard.
Yeah, Senator Koch.
Senator Koch.
It's a long ways to drop an empty.
Sorry, Tanner, I'm like...
You're good, you're good. Apologize for my attire. So I also spoke to 4 student body president or student organization presidents, how they felt about this. And all 4 were very shocked that they had speaking rights because they didn't know about it. So I asked them, well, would you like to come speak at Senate this week to defend your speaking rights? And they're like, well, I'm not sure I really want to do that because I don't really know what's going on. And then B, they said, well, isn't that kind of your job to represent me? And I was like, yeah, it kind of is. So that's kind of how I feel about it. With my conversations with those 4 presidents, it actually sparked some other interesting conversation as well that I'll speak about later tonight.
Alrighty, thanks for that debate, Tanner. We'll now go back to speeches in the negative. Senator Collery-Kjall.
Okay, hi you guys. I'm new. So what I've realized is that I genuinely don't know anything about SGA before I joined SGA, right? I was just, regular average Joe, don't know what's going on. And so these presidents of student organizations, they might not know that they have these rights. And just because you don't know that you have these rights doesn't mean you should take them away, right? Oh, a previous speaker mentioned that since 2019, presidents of student organizations haven't been speaking, but I want to remind you guys that in 2020, COVID-19 happened, so that kind of slows a lot of things down. And my third point is, sorry, the whole point of SGA is to represent the student body, and I don't think this bill addresses the root of the problem, which is the lack of student involvement within SGA and the lack of intercommunication between SGA and the student body. Yeah, and that's about it.
Thanks for that debate, Dorothy. We'll now move back to speeches in the positive on Bill 67. Are there any further speakers in the positive? Are there any further speakers in the negative on Bill 67? Chair Simmons.
I'm sorry, I have a point of information. This might be for Advisor Ferris. Is there ever any notifications sent out, perhaps on the CSI listserv, that notifies organization presidents that they have speaking rights in Student Senate?
Great question, Maggie. To my knowledge, that has not been something that has shared before, but it is certainly something that can. SGA has a lot of opportunity to put that type of information in the CSI update. It's just a matter of getting us the blurb to do so.
Yeah, RJ, you've been recognized.
All right. I would like to respond to the three main points that I think the two previous speakers from the proposition have been talking about. The main argument first has been like this is most consistent with our current practices. I'm of the belief that although presidents have not spoken for the past couple of years since 2019, that doesn't necessarily mean it's most consistent with our current practices. Just because somebody doesn't utilize a policy doesn't necessarily mean that like it's something we should get rid of. And so I think like on that point we should still keep this in place because there's still a chance presidents utilize in the first place. Secondly, was the argument made that there are very few presidents that use this, and many presidents that individuals talked to were very shocked and didn't necessarily know that they had these speaking rights and didn't know what was going on in Student Senate, so they didn't feel like they should come and talk. I think it is our job, as previous speakers have stated, that we should advertise ourselves more effectively to engage students and let them know that we are the liaison between the student body and admin. I feel like a lot of students don't know that, and if we are genuinely going to serve students as like the student body representatives, we should be the ones that are taking action to ensure they understand their rights and the opportunities they have within this body and also throughout the university. In my opinion, that solves better for the issue of presidents not speaking than just getting rid of the right entirely. A previous speaker mentioned that our job is to serve and represent students. To serve and represent, we have to let them know that these things exist. Otherwise, no action is going to be taken, and therefore we end up with issues like this. I also agree with previous speakers that stated that COVID has also been a big issue as it comes to presidents speaking and a lot of information being kind of muddled, specifically for student organizations, and that should be taken into account when determining whether this is underutilized or not. Finally, and I think most importantly, was the argument made that there are multiple other ways for individuals to speak on the Student Senate floor, whether it be through open period, getting speaking rights from other individuals, things like that. I think I have three responses to this. First, the ease of accessibility means there's a greater likelihood of interaction with the student body. This policy itself, that if we kept it, would allow students, if they knew about the opportunity in the first place, to come and speak on their own volition. They wouldn't have to make friends with someone in Student Senate, they wouldn't have to determine what like speaking rights they needed or how to go about that. It would just be there and readily accessible for them. Secondly, individuals may not know someone or feel comfortable asking someone within Student Senate for their speaking rights, and that makes that process a lot more difficult for individuals to even get involved in the first place. And I think finally, and most importantly, as previous speakers mentioned, this body does not gain anything from limiting individuals from speaking at SGA. In fact, this body does not lose anything and actually has the opportunity to gain different information, experiences, ideas that can help us be a better body that governs students. By getting rid of this ability for students to speak in Student Senate, we are losing the possibility of making greater change and understanding how we can serve students better. I would urge a vote no on this piece of legislation simply because it reduces the accessibility we have both as SGA and as an university as a whole. Thank you.
Alrighty, thanks for that debate, RJ. Now moving back to speeches in the positive on Bill 67, Leader Kidd.
Point of information, then this may be another question for Advisor Ferris. So when students apply for funding from SGA, are they given any information regarding like being able to speak at Senate meetings?
Great question. That would be an awesome question for allocation chairs to answer what their communications look like.
Do you mind?
Go right ahead, Jacob.
So it is alluded to in the email blurbs, but it's never explicitly said. The general idea of what it's said is the committee will defend you in front of Senate.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Good question. Alrighty, any further speakers in the positive on Bill 67? Any further speakers in the negative on Bill 67, Chair Long?
Marcus, you beat me to the punch by just a second. Yeah, so when I think of reasons why student org presidents would come to speak in front of Student Senate, my brain, perhaps selfishly so, goes to the jobs that Durga and I do in allocations. We try our best to provide a fair and equitable process during that allocation. However, there's a possibility that someone will disagree with what Durga and I have decided and would like to argue to Senate to change that. As long as we are allocating student funds to organizations and allocating their tuition dollars and partially determining what actions they can and cannot take in the form of travel or on-campus stuff, I believe they should have the right to defend their claims here on Senate.
Thanks so much for that debate, Jacob. Are there any further speakers in the positive on Bill 67? Are there any further speakers in the negative on Bill 67? Senator Booz? Did I miss you for the positive? Okay, you're good to go.
Yeah, it would have been weird if I had changed my mind that. But yeah, as you know, or as you may not know, I don't know how much I've talked to you about this, but introducing today is also something relating to judicial speaking rights. And like when I debated against the previous judicial speaking rights bill, I thought that as well as like having a separation of powers issue, which I hope I resolved, but we'll see. That it wasn't as consistent as I would like with the past and the present of SGA. And so that's why I introduced these bills as well as those judicial speaking rights bills, is because I wanted to come up with a consistent way of determining who should have speaking privileges and who should not. And the way that I came up with that was really to say that if you are approved by Student Senate, if your position is approved, then you get speaking rights, and if you are not, you do not. And so in that sense, it does feel like to me, except for the immediate previous speaker's argument, that the other previous speakers are being more inconsistent than I thought, in the sense that I think that it makes a lot more sense since interns are already part of, or getting involved with SGA, for Phase 1 interns to have speaking rights than for completely independent presidents to have those rights and those privileges. So, I think that if you're interested in consistency, you should still vote for this. But the other thing is that some previous speakers have mentioned that we benefit from greater accessibility, and I think it's important to note that that Robert's rules basically assumes that only the people who are student senators, only the people who already are able to vote, are the people who can make motions and speak. And everyone else, including cabinet, including judicial, including other students, would have to get yielded speaking rights. And so we are already have massively increased the amount of people who can speak, and we're already we're already very open. And I honestly think that getting rid of this independent right, as I've expressed in my previous speech, would have very minor effects as to how much we can hear from the students. Yes, I very much agree that we should advertise ourselves more effectively, but I think whether or not we advertise, the amount of people speaking will not change if we remove this versus if we keep this. I don't think we'd have any additional people speaking if we keep this right. So finally, I think it's good to be consistent, but obviously it's your choice. You can vote how you want. But I also think that since we've mentioned that people have not been aware of this, it might be valuable to postpone this to next week and send out something to every president of student organization saying, hey, we're debating on your independent right that you likely didn't know you have to speak in Student Senate. And if you have thoughts, email me or email someone else. And so I think that would also be valuable if somebody else would like to make that motion. But I don't think I'm going to, because I think that would just be a whole bunch of extra debate if I'm the only person who wants to do that. So overall, I think that passing this would be more consistent with the past, and I think that whether we pass this or not, we won't change the number of people or our accessibility overall, and would still encourage you to vote yes, however.
Alrighty, thanks for that debate, Andrew. Are there any further speakers in the negative, Director Grolmes?
Hey everyone, just a couple of thoughts here. So I think when we're talking about getting people here and understanding what presidents of student organizations can do here, that's probably a failing on my position as communications director for showing people what kind of abilities they have, right? So previous speakers have mentioned numbers not changing. But earlier we did hear from our open period speaker, Jackson Berland, who talked about getting more visibility of SGA with the student body through the radio station. So kind of an idea that I'm proposing is doing more work to be more visible to students so that students know that they are welcome here, and those who are presidents do have speaking rights. As other previous speakers have mentioned, it's important to be welcoming and have the ability for students to come and speak if they want that. But first, they have to know. I think one of the biggest barriers to success is simply not knowing what is available to you. So as a body, and particularly positions such as mine that have that relation to the student body, it's very important to showcase what possibilities there are. So I think you should vote no on this and make it a priority to be a really big advocate for connecting SGA with other students and students on campus who may be interested but don't know. A little personal anecdote. Today at work, I was talking with my supervisor, who is a K-State graduate. She's also was a transfer student. So coming to K-State, she didn't really know a lot about how these inner workings of like campus went, because she wasn't here as a freshman to experience it. So I think that there are a lot of students who don't have that knowledge. So I think I can do a better job of showing students what kind of possibilities they have in this body. So instead of thinking about how numbers may not increase, let's try and do what we can to get more people in this room and to fill it up, to fill that Zoom room up. And I think we might even have a guest to speak about it. So thank you. And if anybody has ideas, please let me know. I'm working on an Instagram story right now to post to talk about presidents having speaking rights and what that means, and to try and welcome everyone. So let's try and just get some actionable steps to filling Wildcat chambers up. Thanks.
Alrighty, thank you, Rachel. Leader Voldemort, you have debate in the positive.
Yeah, thank you. Just really briefly, I started out in the negative, I think, but I did want to just bring this point up. I'm still a little bit on the fence, but I think it's important to consider that you're not necessarily totally taking away the speaking rights of presidents of organizations, and the way it's currently written, you're allowing speaking rights anytime for anything. The difference is if we took this out, you could still, and I think we can improve on this, is reaching out to organization leaders as certain legislation comes up that is relevant specifically to them. And then in that case, you can allocate your speaking rights to those people, as has been done in the past. So then, if it is important to that organization, it's probably not just the president that needs to speak, it's probably multiple people. So that avenue still exists, and I think this legislation does clean up and make our bylaws and everything are a little bit more concise. So like I said, I'm still a little bit in the middle, but I think it's important that when it comes to legislation that is specific and affects those organizations, that we should just reach out to those individuals and those organizations, and they still would have the opportunity to come speak. And I don't think that would change. I think either way, whether we pass or not, we can still reach out to those organization leaders and people. But yeah, I'm curious to see what anyone else has to say.
Alrighty, thanks for that debate, Parker. Are there any further speakers in the negative?
Point of information.
Yes.
So there was some discussion earlier about whether speaking privileges also confers the right to make motions. Does 509, Section 509 is currently written, what we're looking to amend, does it confer the right to make motions or just make debate?
That is a really good question. Max, would you like to provide your 2 cents?
I mean, it's just kind of like what I said earlier, like just the standard practice. We don't ever distinguish between speaking rights and rights to make motions in the bylaws or the Senate standing rules or anywhere. They just have always been practiced as synonymous.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Debates in the negative on 67. Senator Rook.
There's a debate in the negative on Zoom.
Oh, okay. Thank you for pointing that out.
There's also a point of information on Zoom.
Point of information first.
Yeah, just real quick, I think it's important to clarify either way we decide on this piece of legislation is whether or not we allow independent student orgs and dependent student organizations, because I think that's important. If we allow any student organization, I guess it's just important to clarify that and what we do currently allow. I'm not sure where we decided on that.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Parker.
There is no difference.
It was
Yeah.
all student organizations,
Like,
I thought as well.
the way that the text is written in the legislation, it doesn't differentiate between the two types of organizations, so we're going to assume that all of them would have these rights. Okay, debate in the negative in the Zoom. I can't see which name it is. Maggie.
Naomi is what the name is.
Perfect. Then you have the floor.
Okay. Hello. Good evening. My name is Naomi Galindo, and I am the current president of Modern Language Student Association. And I would like to keep my speaking rights in the Senate.
Thank you very much for your debate, Naomi. We're now going to move back to speeches in the positive on Bill 67. Are there any further speakers in the positive? Are there any further speakers in the negative on Bill 67? Senator Fields.
Sorry, I've never spoken. It feels really weird despite me teaching like every day in front of tons of people, so I don't know why that is. But I want to comment that there's a lot of comments about consistencies, but I don't feel that we always have consistencies, specifically with training. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on that, but I personally feel that way, that there's not a lot of consistencies with training and information giving to us as Student Senate, so how can we expect all of those consistencies, all of this information to be given to presidents of organizations? I'm the president of the Sociology Graduate Student Association, and even being in this body, I had no idea of any of this personally. So I think that it's really important that if we don't have the information and we're talking about a lack of engagement, a lack of people being here, a lack of people knowing what's going on here, I don't think it's necessarily fair to then cut back speaking rights to any degree in any situation. I understand that there's still other options, but I feel that even any hindrance on it is a hindrance in general, that it's more important that we make it accessible and we make it as open as it can be, in a position to kind of narrowing that. Thanks.
Alrighty, thanks for that debate, Kyle. Are there any further speeches in the positive on Bill 67? Are there any further speeches in the negative on Bill 67? Are there any further speeches at all on Bill 67? Perfect. With that, we will go into a roll call vote on Bill 67. Whenever you're ready.
Byrne?
No.
Bannister?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Byrne?
No by proxy.
Bellamy?
No.
Binkley?
Pass by proxy.
Blood?
No.
Booze?
Yes.
Kahlo?
She's got. Oh, sorry. No by proxy. Sorry.
It's okay, thank you. Compton? DeMott?
Yes.
Dunlap?
No.
Insero?
Pass.
Esslinger?
Yes.
Fields?
No.
Fuss?
No by proxy.
Gann? Gann? Glasscock?
No.
Heatherman? Heatherman? Holland? Holland? Hotzel?
No.
Jambunathan?
No by proxy.
Kalarikial?
No.
Kidd?
No.
Koch?
Yes.
Kramer?
No by proxy.
Lister? Lister?
No by proxy.
No by proxy, thank you. Long?
No.
Lynn?
No.
Marquez?
No by proxy.
Mayor?
Yes.
McPhee?
No.
Nelson?
No.
Pineda Gomez?
No.
Porter?
No.
Prester?
Yes by proxy.
Richenberg?
No.
Riffle?
Yes.
Rook?
No.
Roth?
Yes by proxy.
Salmon?
No.
Scharnhorst?
Yes by proxy.
Shear?
No.
Schindler?
No.
Spliegel?
No.
Stout?
Yes by proxy.
Sisma?
No.
Thomas?
No.
Volgamore?
No.
Wallace? Warren?
No by proxy.
Willis Jackson?
No.
Willis Reese?
No.
Going back to the passes. Binkley?
No by proxy.
And Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, and did I miss anyone on those passes? Okay. And then the vote is 12 to 35 to 0, so this fails.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Ariana. With that, we've moved through final action for the evening, and we'll now proceed to introduction of legislation. First up, Bill 21-2269. Is there a motion to consider? Chair Lynn.
To bulk consider.
Senator Blood has moved to bulk consider bills 69 and 70. Is there a second? Are there any objections to bulk considering 69 and 70? Alrighty, fantastic. Well, the Chair Harmon.
I object to the consideration of both bills.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, given the fact that we have had a similar bill that addresses the same issues and defeated it in a former meeting, I object to considering these bills this meeting.
Alrighty. So, Max, I'm going to ask you for a little bit of help here on what I have to do to settle that question.
It's a non-debatable motion upon which the body votes. A 2/3 vote in the affirmative approves the objection to consider, and we will not consider these bills. If it doesn't achieve a 2/3 vote, then we consider them as normal.
Alrighty, perfect. Thank you so much. So, Chair Harmon has made the motion to not consider these bills at all. Senator Rook, do you have a question?
Can I second?
Okay, perfect. It's got a second. We're going to try a hand vote on what Chair Long.
Point of information. The Speaker Blake included these, obviously. What was his reason?
For considering them,
Yes.
they were submitted.
Because they were submitted.
Okay. We're going to do a hand vote on whether or not we want to consider these pieces of legislation. Now, Voting in the positive on this hand vote means that you agree with Max's motion that these bills ought not be considered because of debate that happened previously tonight.
Yes.
If you vote no on this hand vote, that means you want to consider these pieces of legislation. All of those in support of the motion to not consider, please raise your hands now. Proxies, you can raise too. Okay. Everyone opposed to the motion, people that would like to consider these pieces of legislation, please raise your hands now. Okay. I'm pretty confident that the positive does not meet 2/3 there, Max, so that motion to not consider fails. We will consider these bills as normal. Senator Rook.
I would like to request a roll call vote.
Second.
Alrighty, I think that just happens now. So we'll do a roll call vote on the motion to consider. This is going to work the same way as before. If you vote yes here, that means you are approving the motion and you would like to not consider the bills. If you vote no here, that means you are against the motion and you would like to hear these bills being introduced.
Separately.
Yeah.
Separately or together.
I mean, that's a separate question entirely. It is about whether or not we bring them up at all tonight.
At all.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what the motion
Yeah, I want to hear.
You were first.
Okay, Bane.
I still can't figure out.
I'm so sorry. I think there is a lot of confusion about what we are actually voting on right
Yes,
now.
perfect. Thank you, Peyton. Alrighty. We are having a roll call vote on the objection to considering these pieces of legislation tonight. Question.
So, let me clarify. If you are voting yes, that means that you do not want to consider these bills, period, correct?
That is exactly correct.
Okay, so if we vote yes, then this is not going to be voted on next week.
That's correct.
Okay.
Director Atchison, question?
No.
Didn't they already vote on it?
It's done.
He called for a roll call.
Yeah. Chair Porter.
If we carry the motion, do these bills just go away?
Yeah, I mean, I think they could be brought up again if they had support to be considered, but I think they would just disappear into space for now. Okay, so we're all clear. Peyton, thank you for asking. If you vote yes on the objection, we will not consider them. If you vote no on the objection, we will consider them as we have with every other piece of legislation.
Can I just ask one more question?
Of course.
I thought there was the motion to just like bulk do it. So instead of just looking at them bulk, where did that decision go?
That decision kind of fell like that. This motion supersedes that one. This one is more important. We will deal with this first, and then we can talk about considering them together only in the event that we consider them at all.
Okay, that's what I
Point of order. We approved the motion to both them.
That's also true.
So if we end up considering them, they'll be considered together. So now, my objection was to considering both of them together. My objection was to considering either of them. So.
Oh,
the
not
two.
together at all.
Right. I'm not objecting to them being together. I'm objecting to them being
That's what I
considered.
thought you were objecting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification, Max. Alrighty, before we go into this vote, does anyone have any more questions that they would like to ask? Okay, perfect. Take it away.
Taking it away. Bane?
Yes.
Bannister?
Yeah.
Yes.
I voted on this like a long time ago.
Barron?
Okay.
Barron?
No by proxy?
Bellamy?
No.
Binkley?
Yes, by proxy.
Blood?
Yes.
Booze?
No.
Byrne?
No.
Kahlo?
Pass by proxy.
Compton? DeMont?
No.
Dunlap?
No.
Ansero?
No.
Esslinger?
Yes.
Fields?
Pass.
Fuss? Fuss?
Oh, no by proxy.
Gann? Gann? Glasscock,
No.
Heatherman, Heatherman, Holland, Holland, Hotzel,
No.
Jambunafen,
No by proxy.
Kalarikiel,
No.
Kid,
Pass.
Koch,
Yes.
Kramer,
Yes, by proxy.
Lister,
No by proxy.
Long,
No by, no.
Lynn,
No.
Marquez,
No by proxy.
Mayor,
Yes.
McPhee,
No.
Nelson,
Yes.
Pineda Gomez,
Yes.
Porter,
No.
Prester, thank you, Rischenberg,
No.
Riffle,
Yes.
Rook,
Yes.
Roth,
Yes by proxy.
Salmon,
No.
Scharnhorst,
No by proxy.
Shear,
Yes.
Schindler,
Yes.
Splekel,
Yes.
Stout,
Yes by proxy.
Sisma,
No.
Thomas,
No.
Volkmore,
Yes.
Wallace, Warren,
Yes by proxy.
Willis Jackson,
No.
Willis Reese.
Yes.
Okay, going back to the passes. Byrne, sorry, that wasn't pass. Kahlo,
Yes by proxy. Sorry.
no problem. And then Kid.
Yes.
Okay, did I miss any passes?
Yes. Yes.
Fields?
Fields, fine.
And you, yes is your vote? Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay. On a 24 to 24 to 0.
So yeah, that's gonna fail then. Is it not a tie?
It's a two-thirds
done.
vote.
Still funny though.
So that means we're going to consider these pieces of legislation as normal. The motion to bulk consider them was already approved. Will the author to both of these bills please come forward?
Well, I'm sorry for making you debate the same thing twice, but it shouldn't hopefully be the same.
Leader Thomas.
Motion to allow the author summarize.
Second.
Any objections?
No.
Hot dog.
Cool. Yeah, so really, Bill 69 is a bylaws change that I think resolves a majority of my concerns with letting judicial members have speaking rights. In particular, it changes the section, so starting on line 108, adds another reason for a conflict that would cause bias, which is debating any relevant legislation or documents in Student Senate or any KSU-SGA committee meeting. Then, if you go to section 2, that makes sure that people, even in appeals, are also recusing themselves based on that list of bias that was in section 8. And then in section 3, that also makes sure that when we're doing an interpretation hearing, that is, when we are interpreting KSU-SGA bylaws, constitution, or legislation, that is also a reason for recusal in addition to having special knowledge in other ways. And so it's just, that one in particular is making sure that we're as clear as possible that like if you do like care enough about it to debate, that you're also recusing yourselves just in case it comes up in a judicial case. And so I think that's a major difference because I do think that's part and parcel with the other bill that I'm presenting. And so Bill 70 then is very similar to the previous one. It will need to be amended in committee to change the reference to KSU SGA interns based on what we passed this week. But it both changes gives judicial branch board members, in addition to the judicial branch executive or officers that already had the speaking rights. So judicial board members would now have speaking rights. KSU SGA committee members would move from only having speaking privileges based on what their committee had authored or sponsored, or if it's relevant to their committee, to having full speaking rights or speaking privileges. And there's also a catch-all. All other positions in KSU SGA whose appointment is subject to the approval of Student Senate would have speaking rights. And then there's also some other just grammatical changes. For instance, like fixing the Robert's Rules of Order there, and also making sure that the yielding time, kind of splitting that up because it already had that number 1 there, and so it just made more sense to me to split that up into 1, 2, and 3. So yeah, if there's any questions, I will absolutely try to answer them to the best of my ability.
Alrighty, thanks so much, Andrew. Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Alrighty, if that's the case, you can take your seat. And with that, we've exhausted our legislative agenda for the night, and we'll move into second open period. Are there any speakers for second open period? Senator Cope.
Hello again. Okay, so I kind of mentioned at the very end of my discussion earlier that these discussions that I had with a couple officers kind of prompted some other interesting conversation. So a lot of the times when I tell people that I'm an SGA, they're like, oh, well, what does SGA do? And I was like, well, we do, I mean, you guys know what we do, but they don't. So, and a lot of the times then they ask, well, it's like, well, how does that directly help me? And I was like, well, maybe a lot of this amendment bylaw stuff doesn't directly influence you, but some of the funding stuff does greatly influence you. So yesterday, I was probably able to do what I consider probably the most important thing that I've done in Student Senate, and I was literally just able to point someone to the sports club funding allocation page. It was just that simple. It was a simple conversation that basically gave them the information to find access through SGA. So I would encourage everyone to go talk to different club and organizations that you may be involved with or that you know people are involved with, and just tell them about some of the opportunities that we have. Sure, we have our Instagram page. I follow our Instagram page. I'm sure all you guys do, but I'm not sure a lot of other students on campus do outside of SGA. So be pushing the Instagram page, but also just personal conversations. Tell people about what we're going on, because it's some pretty cool stuff. So thank you.
Heck yeah.
Thanks, Jana. Any other comments?
Before you all leave today, you better say happy birthday to the Maggie Billman because it's her 21st birthday. Yeah, everyone clap. Let's go. Come on. And can we just be all so grateful that we have somebody like Maggie Billman in SGA? I mean, she's a great leader, a great woman, so powerful, has really good style as someone who's in sweatpants and a sweatshirt. But yeah, just make sure you're grateful for her and you wish her happy birthday because I think she's pretty cool. That's it.
Please do not.
No.
No.
Oh, she doesn't. She said no.
Alrighty. Are there any further leader kids?
Point of information. I apologize if this was already mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, but earlier you talked about how next week we'll have to request to get the Zoom link to participate via Zoom and not in person. So the rules with not being allowed to eat or drink, is that still going to be practiced, or will that be?
Everything will look exactly as it did for the entirety of the fall semester.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Leader Pineda Gomez. Do you have a speech? Go right ahead.
Sorry, can I ask something? I don't understand what your answer was.
everything that we, like, right now, we have the Zoom link public. Anyone can go over Zoom if they feel more comfortable. Next week, it will look much more similar to what you were used to before we came back in January.
So that's a yes or no to the food?
Yeah.
I couldn't answer that off the top of my head. I don't actually know what our food rules were.
Our food, you could have no mask while you're eating and drinking in wildcat chambers.
I think so.
Yes.
Then yes.
Okay, so the time for debate on this piece of legislation has since passed, but I've kind of sat on this question, and specifically I'm referencing the legislation that was dealing on whether or not student organization presidents should have speaking rights or not. And I kind of started off with a no, I don't think they should, and I went back and forth on how I felt about that, probably about a total of 6 times. The whole time that it was being debated, there was great points brought up on both sides. Kudos to anybody that debated that. But the question that I kind of sat on is, what do we gain from limiting other people's speaking rights in the Senate, right? And 2 of the biggest points that were brought up were efficiency and consistency. Now, I'm someone that is all for efficiency and consistency, and especially when it comes to a Thursday night student government Senate. You know, those 4-hour Senates are real fun, but rather not do them week in and week out, right? And so I kind of thought about this, and I was like, well, you know, that'd be a really great thing. But then I kind of sat on, like, what would be at stake, you know? And while efficiency and consistency, I agree, make a body and an organization as a whole, and I think that would make us as a body extremely, like, more powerful and able to do what it is that we are actually set to achieve. I think we're losing sight of what representation, what having more voices in here could do. Now, in my time in SGA, I've never seen wildcat chambers filled up, and you know, in part that's thanks to, you know, COVID and Zoom and, you know, lower enrollment numbers, and you guys know all the rest. But I think seeing this chamber fill up even more would be awesome. And if that's student body, like, or student organization presidents doing some of that, if that's members of a different organization doing that, then I would be all for it. And I think you should be too. Thank you.
Alrighty, thanks, Ron. Are there any further speakers for second open period? In that case, Ariana, you can take it away with the shoutouts.
Yeah, okay. So, I will not do that. First, happy birthday, Maggie. To the Kroger, to the Koger for making organic bridges. Shout out to Maggie for coming to Senate on her birthday. Speaker Nick, hard eyes emoji. Shout out to Ariana for being a great pro tem. Thank you so much. Shout out to Nick for being a great speaker. To Nick for speaking. Parker Volgamore looks gorgeous. Michael Dowd looks gorgeous. To SSF for being good at their jobs. Austin Rook, shouts out for being a real one. Logan was thrown off by Nick's getaway car. Shout out to Marcus Kidd for being a curious and inquisitive student. Rachel, hard eyes. Shout out to Rachel for always looking so cute. Shout out to Josh for his awesome working cabinet. Shout out Joshua, I am literally in love with you. How embarrassing. Anyways, I would like to clarify that was an announcement. I wasn't just saying. To Jyoti for speaking, hard eyes. Shout out to Naomi. How many times? Moving on. Shout out to complicated parliamentary motions. That's what truly makes student senate a senate. Shout out to complicated parliamentary procedure. Thank you to everyone new, including the presidents of student organizations who debated tonight. It was a blast. Shout out to Hot Dog. Shout out to Senator Fields for speaking up for the first time. Shout out to Senator Bain for clarifying the vote again and again and again. Senator Coke or Senator Coat? Shout out to Tanner for being a top 3.5 TAC member. Maggie! It's in all caps. Shout out to Maggie for being cool. To Nick Saya for being awesome and amazing. Maggie 2024. Shout out to Olathe Northwest students in positions of power. No. That is it. Thank you, everyone.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Ariana. Now on to, are there any further speakers for second open period? Okay, on to reference of legislation. Both bills 69 and 70 are referred to the Senate Operations Committee.
Nick, will you tell people that they're more than welcome to come?
They're more than welcome to go to Senate Operations if they'd like to.
On Tuesdays at 5:45.
On Tuesdays at 5:45.
In room 205?
208. Something like that. 208.
Alrighty.
It's upstairs.
Now it is time for second roll call. Oh, Chairline, did you have a...
No.
Okay.
I was getting ahead of myself.
Bain.
Here.
Bannister. Bannister? Is he saying yes?
Here.
Byrne. Obviously not here. Bellamy.
Here.
Binkley. Blood.
President.
Booze.
Here.
Byrne.
Here.
Kahlo. Compton. DeMont.
Here.
Dunlap.
Here.
Insero.
Here.
Esslinger.
Here.
Fields.
Here.
Gus. Oh, Gus. Fuss. Fuss?
No, I was just wrong.
Gann.
Here.
Glasscock.
Here.
Heatherman. Holland. Hotzel. Jambunathan.
Here.
Thank you. Calarico.
Here.
Kid.
Here.
Coke.
Here.
Kramer. Lister. Long.
Here.
Okay. Lynn.
Here.
Marquez.
Here by proxy?
No, sorry. So sorry. McPhee. Nelson. Pineda Gomez.
Here.
Porter.
Here.
Richenberg.
Here.
Riffle.
Here.
Rook. Oh, so sad.
He's here. He's there.
Okay, thank you. Roth. Salmon.
Here.
Shear. Schindler.
Here. Here.
Spiegel.
Here.
Stout. Sisma.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Volgamore.
Here.
Wallace. Warren. Willis Jackson.
Here.
Willis Reese.
Here.
I move to adjourn until next week, same time, same place.
Any objections? Alrighty.
Wait, that was-